Sleep matters. The mirror that sees itself. Imagine you walk into a room that is completely empty except for one thing, a mirror placed in the center. Not on a wall, not reflecting you. Just standing there, facing nothing but itself. You sit down quietly. No one else is around. The mirror reflects itself. And as you stare at it, something strange begins to happen. Your mind slips into that reflection. You start to wonder what it means for something to look at itself, to see without needing another, to reflect without being told what to reflect. Now stretch that idea. What if your own awareness is like that mirror? What if your mind is not just thinking, but thinking about its own thinking, noticing itself, watching itself move, turning its gaze inward in a loop with no end? This is not a puzzle you need to solve. It is something you fall into, like a dream that wakes you gently. The mirror that sees itself is not a physical object. It is your consciousness becoming aware of consciousness, noticing that it notices. And in that loop, the line between subject and object begins to blur. Normally, we live with a separation. You look at the sky, and the sky is there, outside you. You feel hunger, and the hunger is a signal, something happening to you. But what happens when the watcher becomes the watched? When the self begins to observe the self, not through thoughts, not through language, just pure awareness folding back on itself, it can feel dizzying, like two mirrors placed face to face, each reflecting the other into infinite depth. No end, no beginning, just layers of self inside self. And the deeper you go, the more the boundaries start to fade. You are no longer sure what part is the thinker and what part is the thought, what part is the mirror and what part is the image. This is not philosophy meant to impress. It is a quiet doorway into your own experience. Right now, as you listen, pause. Notice the voice in your head that reads these words. Now, notice that you are noticing that voice. And if you look even closer, you may find that there is something behind even that something that simply watches, still, silent, not doing anything, just being. That is the mirror, not a thing, not an object, just presence. It does not judge, it does not react, it simply reflects. And in that reflection you begin to dissolve, not in a frightening way, but in a peaceful unraveling, like fog lifting slowly from a field in the morning. There is no self to find, because the one who is looking is the one who is being looked at. The moment you try to grasp it, it slips away. But if you rest in it, if you allow the loop to simply exist, something opens, a silence, a clarity, a stillness that holds no name. The awareness-amnesia paradox lives here too. You are always aware, but you forget that you are. You forget that this mirror has always been watching, not as a person, not as a mind, but as something deeper. You are not in front of the mirror. You are the mirror, and everything else, your name, your memories, your story, are just reflections moving across its surface. But the mirror does not change. It remains, and it sees. Even when you forget, even when you sleep, even when you feel lost, it is there. Not asking to be found, not needing to be cleaned or fixed or improved. Just waiting, and once you remember it, even for a second, the rest of life softens. You no longer chase meaning, you no longer fight to hold an identity, you simply rest in the reflection, a loop that watches itself, a light that shines quietly from within, and in that calm recognition, something lets go. You are not the thoughts. You are the space where they arise. You are not the mirror's image. You are the stillness that holds the image. You are not the one being seen. You are the seeing itself. The memory loop. You never lived. Picture this man walking through an old town he has never visited before. The streets feel familiar. The air smells like something from his childhood, though he cannot say what. He turns a corner and suddenly knows what the next building looks like. He steps inside a shop and feels like he has been there before. But he has not. He is sure of that. Still, something whispers, "You remember this." But how? This is the beginning of the memory loop you never lived. It is not déjà vu, it is something stranger. A memory that does not come from your life. A loop that plays inside your mind, but has no origin, and yet it feels real. As if somewhere, sometime, you did live it. As if your brain has reached into a place you have never been and found something waiting. You try to explain it away. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe it was a story you once heard. Maybe it is just your brain making false connections. But the feeling stays. The memory stays, even though it never happened. So where did it come from? Some believe the mind is not just a storage of personal experience. They believe it is like a field, a wide space where ideas float freely, where thoughts are not always yours, where memories can rise like echoes from places you have never touched, and when you step into that space, something strange happens. You begin to feel lives that are not yours, scenes that you never lived, emotions that seem too familiar. It is as if the mind is tuning into a signal, not creating it, just receiving. And in that moment, the boundary between memory and imagination dissolves. You do not know if it is fiction or fact, but your body feels it, your emotions believe it. That is the loop. It is not just one scene repeating, it is the feeling of a forgotten truth cycling through you. Not to teach, not to warn, just to remind. But remind you of what? You cannot say, and that is the paradox. The awareness amnesia returns again. You are aware of the feeling, the flash, the loop. But you forget that you never lived it. You forget that it is not yours. Or maybe you never knew in the first place. Maybe the mind is deeper than your life. Maybe it stretches into places where time and experience are not separated by birth or death. What if some memories are shared, not passed down through blood, but through awareness itself? What if your consciousness is not locked inside your head? What if it floats, connects, receives? And when the conditions are just right, it picks up something beyond your story. A memory not from your past, but from the collective. From the space between lives. From the quiet library of existence. It sounds strange. But so does the fact that you remember dreams, or that you can cry over music made before you were born. Somewhere deep in the mind, there is a loop. It is not yours, and yet it feels like it is. It plays when you least expect it, in a song, in a stranger's face, in the way a certain light hits a wall, and it leaves you with a question, not the kind you answer, but the kind you carry. The man walks out of the shop, the memory fades, but the feeling stays. He will not speak about it. He will not try to explain. He will just hold it, like a secret folded inside his breath, a loop that continues quietly inside him, even now, even here, even in you, the voice behind your thoughts. What if I told you that the voice you hear in your mind is not always yours? Imagine waking up one day in a silent world, not the kind where sound is gone, but where the voice inside your head has vanished. No narration, no inner commentary, no running dialogue, just pure, raw experience. At first it feels freeing. There is nothing evaluating you, nothing judging you. But soon, an emptiness creeps in. A strange hollowness, as if someone you always assumed was part of you is suddenly missing. That is when the question hits who, or what, is that voice you've been listening to all your life. Most of us think that voice is us, our personality, our soul, our inner self. But what if it is more like a habit, a function, a pattern developed over time? Let's slow everything down and explore that voice, gently, quietly, like we are observing ripples in a still pond. Let's take a breath together, let it out, and now, listen, not to me, but to the voice behind your thoughts. Have you ever noticed how that inner voice talks even when you do not want it to? You try to meditate, and it starts whispering memories. You try to fall asleep, and it replays embarrassing moments. You are having a peaceful walk, and suddenly it is worrying about what someone thinks of you. It speaks in your own accent. It knows your history. It seems like you, but it is not under your control. It just speaks. That voice is like a narrator that never asked for your permission, and yet it shapes how you see the world. It describes everything. It labels experiences. It judges, approves, rejects, plans, rehearses. It even imagines arguments that have not happened yet. You could be looking at a tree, and instead of just seeing it, you hear, "That's a nice tree. It reminds me of that park. I wonder if I should go for a walk later. But I have work. I'm tired. I should rest. But if I rest, I'll fall behind." All of that in just a few seconds. A waterfall of commentary. Non-stop. But here is the twist. You are not doing that on purpose. It is happening to you. Which means there is a you that is not that voice. Let that land for a moment. There is a you beneath the voice. A watcher. A presence. The one that listens, even when the voice is loud. The one that feels peaceful when the voice quiets down. That silent awareness. That is you. Now think about when you are fully present, completely in the moment. Maybe watching a sunset. Maybe caught in music. Or laughing so hard you forget yourself. In those moments, where is the voice? Usually, it is silent, or distant, or gone. That is not an accident. That is your natural state. The voice behind your thoughts is like background noise. Useful sometimes, but not the essence of who you are. Why does it talk so much? Well, it learned to. Since childhood, you were taught to name, explain, understand. Language became the tool for survival. Be careful. Say thank you. Think before you speak. What will people think? These phrases built the scaffolding of your inner narrator. It mimicked what it heard. It formed rules. It rehearsed them. Over time, it became so constant that you forgot it was there. But here is something strange. If that voice is shaped by your environment, by what you heard, by what you were told, then parts of it are not even your own thoughts. They are echoes. Echoes of parents, teachers, friends, fears, desires, culture, expectations, wounds, which means the voice behind your thoughts might be filled with scripts you never chose. Maybe it says you are not good enough, or that you must always achieve, or that you must please everyone, or that you will never be loved. These voices feel personal, but often they are inherited. And that brings us to a gentle truth. You are not the voice. You are the space in which it speaks. Now take a moment. Close your eyes if you want to. Listen not to the words, but to the silence behind them, the space, the stillness. That stillness is where your real self lives, calm, observing, always present, always untouched by the chaos of thoughts. You are the listener, not the noise. Sometimes the voice gets louder, especially when you are stressed, when you are uncertain, when you are afraid. It spins stories, predicts disasters, tells you what others might be thinking. It becomes a storm, and in the middle of that storm, you start believing the voice is the truth. But what if it is just a storm passing through? You do not have to silence the voice. That only makes it louder. You do not have to fight it. That gives it power. All you need to do is notice it. Notice it like a passing car, like a breeze moving through leaves. You watch, you breathe, you return to the space within, and slowly something magical happens. The voice softens. The stories lose their grip. A gentle presence returns, a sense of peace that was always there, hidden beneath the noise. The voice behind your thoughts will always be there, but now you see it clearly. You do not need to believe everything it says. You do not need to react. You can just listen, smile, let it pass, because the real you is not the voice. The real you is the awareness watching it all. Quiet, steady, eternal. And when you remember that, life becomes softer, lighter, more beautiful. So next time the voice speaks, just ask, who is listening? That question alone can wake you up. Now, breathe, rest. Let the voice drift. You are home. The question that creates reality. What if the world around you was not shaped by what you see, but by the questions you ask? Imagine you are standing in a vast white room. No windows, no doors. Just space stretching in every direction. It is silent, still, and then suddenly a voice whispers, "What is this place?" As soon as the question appears, so does a door. Then you ask, "Where does it lead?" And the door creaks open to reveal a garden. You step in, confused but curious. "Why am I here?" you ask. A path appears. What happens if I follow it? More steps. More scenery. Each question unfolds a new piece of the world. And slowly, you realize something strange. This place is not showing you answers. It is responding to your questions. Reality, in this space, is not something you discover. It is something you create by asking. Now bring that idea back to your real life. Think about your day. When you wake up and ask, "Why am I so tired?" Your mind starts searching for proof. It says, "Because you stayed up late. Because life is hard. Because everything is exhausting." And suddenly, your day begins with a heavy cloud. But what if instead you asked, "What small joy can I find today?" Your mind would look around. It would notice the sunlight, the quiet, the way your breath moves gently in and out. A question, just one, starts to shift your entire experience. This is not magic. It is psychology. The brain is a question machine. It cannot ignore a question once asked. It wants to solve. It wants to answer. That is why the questions we ask ourselves become the shape of our reality. Think about people who are always anxious. Often, they are asking questions like, "What if everything goes wrong?" And their mind, like a loyal assistant, goes, "Here is 100 ways it could." But someone calm might be asking, "How can I respond if something goes wrong?" Notice the difference. The first creates fear. The second builds strength. Now go even deeper. Ask yourself, who am I? That question can haunt or free you. If you believe the voice that replies, "You are not enough," then your life starts to reflect that belief. But if you gently respond with, "I am learning," then every moment becomes an opportunity to grow. You might be wondering, does this mean truth is just a question? Not exactly. There is a deeper truth beneath the questions, a quiet space that does not need answers. But to reach it, you have to understand how the mind builds its layers. It uses questions as bricks, as tools, as mirrors. Here is a quiet example. A child asks, "Why is the sky blue?" They are not expecting a scientific lecture. They are wondering about wonder itself. But the adult might reply, "Because of the atmosphere and light scattering." And, just like that, mystery is traded for fact, curiosity replaced by conclusion. But what if we paused and said, "What do you think?" Suddenly, the child's mind lights up. Reality becomes a playground again. This is the power of a question. It can shrink the world into a tight corner, or it can open it wide into a space of wonder. Now sit still, breathe, ask yourself softly, "What am I not seeing?" Feel how that one question changes your awareness. Your mind begins to look behind the curtain, to see deeper layers. That tree you passed 100 times is now glowing in the sunset. That person you judged quickly now seems more human. That emotion you resisted now begins to soften. A question does not just ask. It invites, it opens, it shapes. There is a beautiful practice some ancient philosophers followed. Each morning they would wake and ask one guiding question. Not hundreds, just one. What is worth living for today? Or What does kindness look like this morning? Or even, how can I see more clearly? They believed that one strong question could be enough to shape a wise day. And at night, before sleep, they asked another, did I live by what I value? These simple practices help them live with depth, not because of the answers, but because of the questions. So now gently ask yourself, what is the question that creates my reality? What do you keep asking every day without noticing? Is it helping you or hurting you? You do not have to answer now. You just have to become aware. Once you see the question, you can choose a new one. And once you choose a new question, the world begins to shift. Reality is not fixed. It listens, it echoes, it reflects. And the doorway into it is shaped by the questions you whisper into the silence. You do not need all the answers. You just need a better question. The mind inside another mind. Picture this. You are sitting in a room. The lights are low. Everything is quiet. Then suddenly a thought arises in your mind. You do not know where it came from. You did not plan it. It just appeared. What if someone is thinking through me? Strange question, right? But let it sit for a moment. What if your thoughts were not completely your own? What if, like a puppet with invisible strings, there was a deeper mind inside your mind? Watching, nudging, whispering, not in a loud way, but in subtle shifts, a feeling here, a word there, a sudden memory, a change in mood. Something is shaping you, and it feels like you. But what if it is not? Now relax. Take a deep breath. This is not about fear. It is about awareness. Think of your conscious mind like a stage, a sudden memory, a change in mood. Something is shaping you, and it feels like you. But what if it is not? Now relax. Take a deep breath. This is not about fear. It is about awareness. Think of your conscious mind like a stage. On this stage, thoughts come and go, images, ideas, desires, stories. And you think, I am the one thinking all this. But have you ever stopped to ask, who decides what thoughts appear? Did you choose to remember that old memory just now? Did you ask for that strange dream last night? Did you plan that random emotion that came while watching a sunset? There is something deeper, a mind behind the curtain. The mind inside your mind. Some call it the unconscious. Some call it the deeper self. Others see it as a mysterious force. But whatever name you give it, its presence is undeniable. It is the one steering the ship while you are busy looking at the stars. Now imagine this. You are dreaming. In the dream, you are walking through a forest. You see trees. You hear birds. Everything feels real, but then you become aware. Wait, you say. This is a dream. Suddenly, the trees flicker. The birds pause. You realize none of it was really there. It was all a creation of your mind. But you did not create it with your conscious self. It came from somewhere else, a deeper part of you, the mind inside. In waking life, something similar happens. You might say, I have decided to do this. But what led to that decision? What thoughts formed the logic? What emotions tipped the balance? Often, by the time we are aware of a choice, it has already been made deep within. The conscious mind is like the surface of the ocean, clear, visible, but shallow. The deeper mind is the vast depth underneath, and most of your life is being shaped by that depth. Let us go even further. Consider how easily your thoughts can be influenced. A word from a stranger can change your mood. A scent from childhood can trigger tears. A piece of music can bring images you have not seen in years. How is that possible? It is because the deeper mind stores everything, every sound, every touch, every feeling. It is all filed away, waiting, and it speaks to your conscious mind, not with words, but with signals, nudges, dreams, intuition. Now think of moments when you had a strong feeling about something, but you could not explain why. I just know this is right, you said. That is the deeper mind speaking. It is not using logic. It is using patterns you are not even aware of. Sometimes the deeper mind is wise. It helps you survive. It shows you beauty. It heals you while you sleep. But sometimes it also holds fear, pain, beliefs that no longer serve you. It can play old recordings from childhood. It can make you afraid of love, afraid of change, afraid of peace. The mind inside your mind is powerful, but it is not always right. And that is where awareness comes in. When you start to notice its patterns, you begin to wake up. You start to see which thoughts are yours and which were placed there, not just by your deeper self, but by others, by parents, by culture, by stories, by pain. And when you see that clearly, you no longer react. You respond. You no longer believe every thought. You question gently. You listen deeper. You ask, where did this come from? And wait. This is not a fight. You are not trying to defeat the deeper mind. You are trying to understand it, to make peace with it, to learn from it, because the deeper mind is not your enemy. It is your shadow. It is your memory. It is your ancient self. And when you listen with kindness, something shifts. The mind inside your mind begins to soften. It begins to trust you. And together, you begin to move as one, not in confusion, but in harmony. You do not have to force anything. Just notice, just breathe, just listen, because the quietest mind is not the one that never thinks. It is the one that knows which thoughts to follow. The paradox of never being born. Imagine waking up in a world where you never existed. No name, no body, no history. You are just awareness floating in a calm, endless space. There are no memories, no labels, no identity. You are not Joe. You are not anyone. You just are. And then a question appears. Have I ever been born? Strange question, but you sit with it. You look around this space and see no signs of birth, no trace of life or death, just presence, pure, silent, untouched presence. And then the paradox forms. If you are aware now, but have never been born, then what are you? Take a breath. Let that idea settle. The paradox of never being born is not about your body. Your body was born. It grows. It changes. It will fade. But your awareness, the thing listening right now, where did it come from? Can you remember a time when you were not aware? Even in deep sleep, something watches. Even in dreams, something sees. So what if awareness never began? What if it just is? Now look at a baby. It cries. It feeds. It sleeps. There's no name yet. No beliefs. No identity. But there is awareness. A presence. Pure and silent. That baby does not know it is born. It just exists. As we grow, we are told, you were born on this day. We believe it. We form a story, a timeline, and then we say, I was born. I am this person. I have this past. But stop and ask, before the story began, what were you? This question leads to the edge of thought, the edge of identity. Because if you were never truly born as a fixed identity, then maybe you are not as someone at all. Maybe you are a presence that wears different masks, a silent witness that appears in different forms. Think of a wave rising from the ocean. It moves, it dances, it shines in the sun, and then it sinks back. Was it ever separate from the sea? Did it ever truly begin? Or was it just the ocean, appearing in a new form? Maybe you are not the wave. You are the ocean. This is the paradox. To live in the world as a person, to have a name, a voice, a face, but to also know, at the deepest level, that none of it is the whole truth, that beneath it all, you were never truly born. You are just awareness, timeless, still. This idea is not meant to confuse, it is meant to free. Because if you were never born in the way you think, then maybe you cannot be broken in the way you fear. Maybe you are not a fragile story. Maybe you are the space in which stories appear. So, breathe. Gently, let your thoughts fall away. What remains? Stillness, presence, the part of you that never needed a name. That part was never born, and it will never end. And in that knowing, there is peace. The observer you can't escape. Imagine sitting in a room completely alone. No noise, no people, no phone, no mirrors, just you. You close your eyes, thinking you are finally alone. But then, you feel something. A presence, not outside, inside, watching. You shift in your seat. The feeling does not go away. You speak a thought quietly in your mind, and it hears you. You try to push it away, but it stays. Still, silent, aware. That is the observer. The part of you that you can never escape. It is easy to think we are just the voice in our heads. That fast-moving chatter that judges, plans, remembers. But underneath that voice is something deeper, something older. It does not speak. It does not react. It just sees. It watches everything. And it has always been there. Think back to childhood. Remember a moment when you got lost in play, maybe running through a field or drawing something alone. In that moment, your thoughts faded. But something remained. Something was there, fully present. That was the observer. Now think of a moment when you were angry, or sad, or afraid. Even in the middle of strong emotions, some part of you noticed it. I am angry right now, you thought. That noticing part was not angry. It was just watching. The observer never takes sides. It never gets pulled into the drama. It sees without judging. It notices without needing to change anything. And yet, most of us forget it is there. We get caught in the stories. I am not enough. I need to be better. People are watching me. But if you slow down, you will see something surprising. You are not just the one being watched. You are also the one watching. In fact, the observer is the only thing that stays the same. Your body changes. Your thoughts shift. Your emotions rise and fall. But the part of you that sees it all? That never changes. It was there when you were 5. It is here now, and it will still be here in your final breath. Try this now. Take a breath, and ask yourself, who is hearing this thought? Not the thinker, but the one noticing the thought. That is you, the deeper you, the part no one can touch. No praise or insult can reach it. No success or failure can affect it. It just watches. Quiet, pure, free. And here is where it gets deeper. When you feel judged by others, it is usually not their voice that hurts you. It is your own inner voice echoing what they might think. But even that voice is being watched. So the question is, if you are being watched from within, can you ever truly lie to yourself? Not really. You can pretend, you can avoid, you can distract. But deep down, that quiet presence knows. It knows when you are not being honest, when you are hurting, when you are ignoring your truth. This is why silence can be uncomfortable. In noise, the observer is drowned out, but in stillness, it rises, not to accuse, not to punish, just to show you what is already there. And once you begin to live from that place, something softens. You stop chasing approval. You stop running from pain. You stop needing to prove anything, because the observer does not need anything. It simply is. This is the self that cannot be broken, the one that existed before you had a name, before you had stories, before you had fear. And it is still here, watching, waiting, not above you, not outside of you, but within you. And once you realize that, truly realize it, you are never alone again, because the deepest part of you is always with you. The dreamer who dreamed you. Imagine waking up one morning, but not in your bed, not in your home. You wake up in another place, a quiet field, a sky with no clouds, and someone is standing there, watching you. They smile. And they say, "Welcome, I dreamed you." Your heart races. What does that mean? You try to speak, but they continue. "You were just an idea, a beautiful thought. I dreamed you into being." That is when you look down at your hands. They feel real. You feel real. But a strange truth settles over you. What if this entire life is just part of someone else's dream? Now come back. Back to this moment, this room, this breath. You are here. But what if you are both the dream and the dreamer? Most people think dreams only happen at night. But what if life itself is a dream? A longer one, a deeper one, the kind where you forget you are dreaming. Ask yourself this. Where were you before you were born? What were you before this body? You might say you do not know, but awareness was still there. Something was. Something is. When you dream at night, do the people in your dream know you are dreaming them? Do they know they are just parts of your mind? Probably not. They laugh, they cry, they talk, just like you, but they are all you. Now think about this life. What if the same thing is happening here? What if you are a dream being dreamed by a larger self, a deeper self? And what if, just like your dream characters, you have forgotten who you really are? This is not a sad thought. It is a freeing one. Because if life is a dream, then nothing is fixed. Nothing is stuck. You can wake up. You can shift. You can change. And here is where it gets interesting. Sometimes in your life, you feel glimpses, moments where time slows down, where beauty becomes overwhelming, where you feel connected to something vast. Those are moments when the dreamer stirs, when the deeper self behind the life remembers itself. You are not just this person, this name, this story. You are also the one who imagined it all. This is the paradox. You are inside the dream, and you are also the dreamer. Every step you take is being watched with love by the part of you that never forgot. That quiet self, that sleeping God, that eternal awareness. So the next time you feel lost, ask yourself softly, what if I am just waking up? The loop where time eats itself. Picture this. A man walks through a hallway. The lights flicker. The clock on the wall spins forward, then backward. He reaches a door, opens it, steps through, and finds himself back at the beginning of the hallway. Again he walks. Again the lights flicker. Again the clock spins. He opens the same door. And again he returns to the start. No matter what he does, he cannot break the loop. Time resets itself, eats itself, repeats itself. Now pause and ask yourself, how different is your life from this hallway? You wake, you eat, you work, you sleep. The sun rises, the sun sets, again and again. Years pass, but some days feel exactly the same. This is the loop, the hidden pattern of time, the strange way it folds in on itself. Sometimes we think time is a straight line, but what if it is more like a circle? What if you are not moving through time? What if time is moving through you? You experience the same thoughts, the same emotions, the same regrets, again and again. Ever catch yourself thinking, I've been here before? Not just in a place, but in a feeling, a moment, a decision. That is time looping, not on a clock, but in the mind. And here is the strange part. You might believe you are going forward, but unless something inside you changes, the loop stays. The past does not leave. It hides in new clothes. Your childhood pain returns in adult relationships. Your old fears show up in new goals. Your patterns echo. Time repeats. And you keep walking that hallway. But now, what if you stop? What if instead of opening the door again, you sit down in the hallway? You breathe. You ask, why does this keep repeating? Suddenly, something shifts. The loop breaks. Not by force, but by awareness. because time only loops when you are unconscious. When you are awake, time flows. It becomes soft, open, alive. You begin to see choice, freedom, new paths. Time does not need to eat itself. It only does when you stop listening. So ask yourself, what part of you is still walking that hallway? And what part is ready to pause? Because when you stop chasing the door, you start remembering that you were never trapped at all, the lie that became true. Imagine a child standing in front of a mirror. Someone behind them says, "You are not smart." The child looks into their own eyes and believes it, not because it feels right, but because the voice saying it seems certain. That sentence, that tiny idea, becomes a seed. Years pass. The child grows. They forget who said it, but the belief remains. I am not smart. It echoes in school, in decisions, in silence. The child no longer needs anyone to repeat it. They say it to themselves, over and over, until one day it becomes true, not in fact, but in life. This is how a lie becomes real, not by proof, but by repetition, by belief, by quiet acceptance. Think back to your own life. What are the things you believe about yourself? Are they based on truth, or were they given to you? Maybe someone said, "You are difficult," or "You are too sensitive." Maybe you were told, "You will never make it," and over time, those words shaped how you walked through the world. Not because they were true, but because they were repeated. The mind is not a fortress. It is a sponge. It soaks in stories, words, looks, reactions. And it builds your identity out of those tiny pieces. So when someone lies to you, especially when you are young, the mind does not argue. It absorbs. And if that lie fits into a fear you already carry, it becomes even stronger. The real danger is not in the lie itself. It is in the moment you stop questioning it. The moment you say, "Maybe this is just who I am." Because when a lie is believed long enough, the world begins to reflect it. You act in small ways that match the belief. You speak less, try less, expect less. And slowly, your life shrinks to fit the shape of a lie. But here is the quiet truth. Even the most deeply believed lie is still a lie. It may have grown roots. It may wear the face of your voice. But if you trace it back, you will find a moment, a memory, a whisper, something that planted it. And when you see that, the lie begins to lose power, because a belief is only strong when it goes unnoticed. So ask yourself now, gently, what do I believe that may not be true? Is it that I am not enough? That I am too late? That I am broken? Who gave me that idea? And why did I accept it? This is not about blame. It is about clarity. Because once you see the lie, you do not have to fight it. You just stop feeding it, and the truth begins to grow. Slowly, quietly. A truth that was always there, waiting for space. The game with no player. Picture this man. He is running through a maze. He turns left, then right, hits a wall, tries again. Every path looks the same. He hears voices, laughter, applause, but sees no one. He shouts, "Who is watching me?" No answer. Just silence. He keeps running, pushing, thinking, "If I win this game, I will be free." But the rules keep changing. The goalposts move. And eventually, something hits him. There may be no player, only the game. Now step back. Look at your own life. You wake. You move. You try to do things right. You avoid mistakes. You chase dreams. You make plans. You hope someone is watching, or judging, or rewarding. But stop for a second. Who is the player? Is it the body? That changes. Is it the thoughts? They come and go. Is it the voice in your head? That shifts with mood. So who is playing this game? Maybe no one. Maybe life is just happening. Maybe the idea of a player is something the mind invented to feel and control, like giving a name to the wind, or a face to the sky. We like roles. We like the sense that someone is behind the curtain, making choices, or strange. But it is not the objects. It is not the colors. It is the way the space is shaped, the way it remembers. Because spaces remember. They remember arguments, silence, laughter, stillness. They carry the echoes of the people who pass through them. And when you sit quietly in a room long enough, you can feel it. You are watching the room, but the room is also watching you, not with eyes, but with presence. And it responds. If you enter with anger, the space feels tight. If you enter with calm, the space feels open. If you cry, the space holds your tears. It does not speak, but it listens. And in that listening, something deep begins to happen. You become aware of yourself in a new way, not as a person with a name, but as a moving piece inside something larger. You start to see how your energy shapes the room, how your breath fills it, how your silence makes it deeper. And then, you see, this is not just about rooms. It is about life. Every situation, every moment, is a room. Some are small, some are vast, some feel safe, some feel heavy, but all of them watch back. Because your life is not happening in front of you. It is happening through you. Every choice, every emotion, every thought sends out a signal, and the world responds, not always in words, but in mood, in timing, in subtle shifts. The room you walk into begins to reflect who you are. So the question becomes, who are you being in the room of your life? Are you walking into each space with presence, with awareness, or are you just reacting? Because the moment you become aware, the space becomes sacred, the room becomes alive, and you stop feeling alone, not because someone is there, but because something deeper is awake. The space, the stillness, the watching. It has always been there, and now you are watching it too. The door with no other side. Picture this. You are standing in front of a door. It is tall, old, covered in symbols you do not understand. You do not know what is behind it, but you are drawn to it. You reach for the handle. A voice inside says, "What if this is the way out?" Out of confusion, out of pain, out of questions. So you open it, step through, and find yourself standing exactly where you began. The door closed behind you, but nothing changed. You are still you, still here, still in the same place. That is when the strange thought arrives. What if this door has no other side? What if every door you have ever walked through just brought you back to yourself? We chase doors all the time. New jobs, new people, new ideas. We say, once I go through this, everything will make sense. But often we arrive, and nothing feels different. Because the door was never the answer. You were looking for yourself in a place you had not yet been, but you were never missing. The mind likes to create the illusion of progress. It says, once I get there, I will be happy. So you walk through door after door, hoping for peace, hoping for change, and each time you carry the same self through the frame. So of course nothing shifts, because the door is not the transformation. The awareness you bring to the door is neutral. It does not promise anything. It does not fix you. It simply offers a moment of choice. And what you bring into that moment is what shapes what happens next. Now imagine this. A person walks up to a door with fear. They expect pain, expect failure. And when they step through, they find exactly that. Another person walks up with curiosity, with openness, and on the other side, they see something beautiful. Same door, different experience. Because the door is a mirror, it reflects your inner world. So what happens when you find a door with no other side? When you realize the end and the beginning are the same, that is the moment when the chase ends and the seeing begins. You stop moving forward. You start looking inward. You begin to understand that you were never going anywhere. You were always just circling yourself, trying to meet the parts you forgot, trying to return to the still point inside you. So now, stand in front of the door again. And this time, do not expect answers. Do not expect change. Just walk through, not to escape, but to remember. Because there is no other side. There is only this side, this moment, this breath, and in it, everything you were searching for is already here. The echo that starts the sound. Picture this moment. You are standing alone in a deep cave. The air is still. The darkness wraps around you like a soft blanket. You take a breath, raise your voice, and whisper a single word. It disappears into the air. Silence. Nothing happens. Then suddenly, you hear the word again, not from your mouth, but from somewhere deeper in the cave. It comes back, soft, distant, familiar, an echo. But here is the strange thing. It sounds like it came before you spoke, almost like the echo started the sound. That idea should not make sense. Sound travels, echoes follow. But what if the pattern is not that simple? What if life is more like that cave? What if your thoughts, your desires, even your actions, are echoes of something deeper, something older? We believe we act, and the world responds. We speak, and then we are heard. But what if we are just responding to something already moving through us? The echo that comes before the sound. Think of a time when you had an idea that felt like it came out of nowhere. You might say, that was a random thought. But was it really? Or was it an echo of something already forming? Maybe it started deep in your subconscious. Maybe it had roots in a dream, or a memory, or a moment you did not even notice. And when it reached the surface, it felt like the beginning. But it was already halfway through its journey. We often think we are the source, the creator, the origin. But what if we are more like instruments, and awareness is the one playing through us? A song echoes in a piano long after the hand is moved. A bell rings long after the strike. Maybe your thoughts are just the ringing, and the real movement happened before you were aware of it. This changes how we understand control, because it means that not every thought needs to be taken personally. Not every emotion is yours to hold. Some are echoes, passing waves, vibrations from old stories. And if you listen deeply, you begin to hear the patterns. A thought that keeps repeating, a fear that returns in different forms. These are echoes, not signs of failure, but signs that something old is asking to be heard. And sometimes you have to stop speaking to hear what has been echoing for years. You are not broken. You are just full of sound. Sound that has been bouncing in the cave of your being, waiting for silence, waiting to be noticed, waiting to return home. So the next time a thought appears, ask, is this the beginning or just the echo? Because the truth might be softer than you imagined. You were never the one starting the sound. You were the one finally listening. The shadow of awareness. Imagine you are standing in the sunlight. The warmth touches your face. The world feels open, clear. You smile. Then you look down, and there it is, your shadow. It stretches behind you, follows you, moves when you move. You cannot touch it. You cannot lose it. But it is always there. Now ask yourself, what is the shadow of your awareness? If light represents your conscious mind, then the shadow is everything just outside that light. Everything you do not want to see, everything you forgot, everything that lives behind your smile. This is the paradox of being aware. The more light you shine inward, the more shadows appear. Not to scare you, but to remind you. Awareness is not just peaceful, it is powerful. And that power reveals what has been hiding. Think of how you react to certain people. You might say, I just do not like them. But look deeper. Maybe they show you something about yourself, something you are not ready to see. That discomfort is your shadow speaking, not to punish, but to show you where you have not looked. The shadow of awareness is not evil. It is not dangerous. It is simply unseen, and everything unseen wants to be seen. Every anger, every insecurity, every deep ache. When you ignore it, it grows loud. When you blame others, it hides deeper. But when you sit with it, it softens. Because the shadow is just a part of you asking for light. Awareness is not about pushing the shadow away. It is about turning to it, looking gently, listening. And when you do, you realize it was never separate. It is part of your shape, part of your story, part of your becoming. You cannot walk away from your shadow, but you can walk with it. And in that walk, you become whole. So the next time pain rises, or judgment, or fear, pause, ask, "Is this my shadow?" And then listen, because the one who watches the shadow is already free, already whole, already aware. The choice you already made. Picture this man. He is standing in front of two paths. One goes left, the other right. He stares, hesitates, tries to imagine where each road leads. He says, "I need more time." But time passes. The sun sets. The stars rise. And then something strange happens. He realizes his feet are already walking. He has already chosen, before his mind caught up. This is the strange nature of choice. We think we make it in the moment, that we weigh options, decide, move forward. But often, the choice was already made, in the quiet, in the background, before the mind explained it, before the logic wrapped around it. It began as a pull, a whisper, a subtle movement in the body. And by the time we say, "I choose this," we are just narrating what has already started. This does not mean you are not in control. It means your deeper self is often ahead of your thinking, and your job is not always to figure it out, but to feel it, to notice the current under the surface. Every big decision you have made had signs before it, a restlessness, a dream, a fear, a spark. And when you finally chose, it felt like remembering something you already knew. Because the truth is, the heart often chooses before the head understands. This is not weakness. It is wisdom. There is an intelligence in your being that goes beyond thoughts. It moves like instinct, like intuition. And when you learn to trust it, you stop second-guessing. You start flowing. You begin to see that life is not just made up of clear answers, but of deep listening. So the next time you are stuck between two paths, close your eyes, stop thinking, feel. Notice what part of you has already started moving, and follow it, because sometimes the choice you are looking for is just waiting for your permission to begin. And deep down, it already has. The identity made of silence. Imagine sitting at the edge of a vast lake. The water is still. The air is quiet. No wind, no sound, just you and the silence. You listen for a while, and then something shifts. You begin to feel a presence, not around you, but within you, a strange feeling, like you are being introduced to yourself for the first time. Not the voice in your head, not the stories you repeat, but something deeper, something made of silence. Most of your life has been filled with noise, labels, roles, thoughts, memories. You carry names, descriptions. You are a student, a friend, a child, a dreamer, a thinker. All of those things feel like you, but they are not the whole you, because beneath those layers there is something untouched, something quiet, something that does not need to be described. This is the identity made of silence, not because it hides, but because it does not need to speak. Think of the space between your thoughts. That tiny gap before a word forms, that gentle pause between breaths, that still moment when you look into the sky and forget your name for just a second. That is where this identity lives. It is not built by opinions, not shaped by success. It is the part of you that watched everything happen without being changed by it. When you were a child, you had moments of pure being. You did not think, "I am someone." You just existed. You saw, you laughed, you felt, you were present. That presence was the silence. As you grew, the noise got louder. You had to learn words, labels, responsibilities. You started collecting an identity, but none of that erased the silence. It just covered it. Now if you close your eyes and let all the thoughts pass, you will feel it again. Still, gentle, complete. This silent identity does not compete. It does not try to prove. It simply is. And the more time you spend in it, the more peaceful life becomes. Because you realize you do not have to become anything. You already are. Not as an idea, but as a presence. The world might ask you, who are you? And you might answer with your name, your role, your past. But deep down, you know none of that holds you. You are the space those things appear in. You are the stillness that sees it all. You are the silence that cannot be broken. Not even by the loudest thoughts. Because even thoughts need silence to exist. And you are that silence, the mirror you forgot you broke. Picture this moment. You walk into a quiet room. Dust floats through the air. In the corner, covered by a cloth, stands a mirror. You feel drawn to it. You reach out, pull the cloth away, and for a second, you see yourself. But something is wrong. The reflection is cracked. Lines run across your face. Your eyes split in half. And then you remember. You broke this mirror a long time ago. You do not know why. Maybe it happened in a moment of pain, or confusion, or anger. But you forgot. And for years, you looked at yourself through that broken glass. You believed the pieces were true. You thought the cracks were you. This is what many of us do. We look at ourselves through a shattered lens, a mirror broken by past experiences, childhood wounds, harsh words, mistakes, loss. And we forget that the mirror is broken. We start to believe the distorted reflection. We say, I am not enough, or I am unlovable, or there is something wrong with me. But those beliefs are not the truth. They are just the shape of the cracks. And the more we believe them, the deeper the break becomes. We live through that reflection. We try to fix the image instead of the mirror. We try to become better, more light, more successful. But none of that reaches the source, because the source is not in the reflection. It is in the remembering that we once held a clear mirror, that underneath the cracks, the whole image still exists. You are not broken, you are whole, but you forgot. And that forgetting has shaped everything. Now is the time to remember, not by changing yourself, but by turning away from the cracked mirror, by no longer believing every thought that rises from the past, by sitting in stillness and letting your true image return, quiet, clear, complete. The mirror was broken, but you never were. You only forgot. Now remember and meet yourself again. The truth that ends meaning. Imagine walking a long road. For years you have collected signs, meanings, reasons. You tell yourself, this is why it happened. That is what it meant. Each moment is part of a story, a pattern, a lesson. But then one day, the road disappears. The signs vanish. And you are left standing in an empty space. No more answers, just silence. And the truth arrives, not loud, not clear, just present. And it says something strange. None of it had meaning. Not in the way you thought, not in the way you hoped. The truth that ends meaning is not cold. It is not cruel. It is free. It says, meaning is something you give, not something you find. And when you stop needing it, everything becomes lighter. You stop asking, why did this happen to me? You begin asking, what do I choose to feel now? You stop chasing a reason for the pain. You begin holding the pain itself, softly, without needing it to mean something. That is where freedom lives, in the ending of forced meaning. Because meaning can become a cage. It can trap you in stories, in explanations, in expectations. But truth, real truth, does not explain. It simply is. The sun does not rise to inspire you. It rises because it does. The wind does not blow to teach you a lesson. It blows because it moves. And you do not have to turn every moment into a message. You can just be alive, breathing, here. That is enough. And strangely, when you stop trying to force meaning, the world becomes more beautiful. Not because it explains itself, but because you are finally free to experience it. Without expectation, without story, just truth, just presence, just life. The time you'll never remember. Imagine closing your eyes and suddenly waking up as a baby again. You have no name, no language, no thoughts, just light, sound, warmth. You feel hunger, but do not know the word for it. You feel comfort, but do not know what caused it. And then imagine forgetting all of that. This is the time you will never remember, the time before your first memory. No one really talks about it. Not because it is not important, but because we assume that if we do not remember it, it must not matter. But what if that time shaped everything? Think about it. Your first smile, your first fear, your first time hearing a voice. All of it happened in silence, in a kind of invisible awareness, long before words. You were awake, alive, breathing, and yet you do not remember any of it. This forgotten time is not empty. It is full. It holds the raw material of who you became. Before memory, there was sensation. Before stories, there was feeling. Before you could say, I am, you simply were. And in that state, something ancient was present. You. Not the thinking you, not the personality, but the pure presence. That part of you never needed memory. It still does not. It is the same part that watches your dreams. The same part that sits quietly when you stare at the stars. It is not lost. It is just not bound by time. So even though you do not remember being born, you were still there. Fully. Completely. And that awareness, the one that lived before memory, is the same awareness reading these words right now. This is why silence can feel so familiar, because it brings you back to a time that memory forgot, but your being remembers. There is no need to go back in time to find yourself. You were never missing. You were simply beyond memory, beyond thought. And in that place, you are more real than ever. The self that cannot be found. Picture this man. He is searching through an old house, room by room, drawer by drawer. He keeps saying, I know it is here. I just have to find it. He pulls out old photos, letters, clothes, everything with his name on it. But still, nothing feels like the real him. He walks to the mirror, looks deep into his own eyes, and whispers, Where are you? This is the journey many of us take. The search for the self. The idea that somewhere, buried deep beneath our fears and layers, there is a true version of us, the real self. We try to find it through work, through relationships, through identity, through expression. But no matter how hard we look, it never fully arrives. Why? Because maybe the self you are searching for cannot be found. Not because it does not exist, but because it is not a thing, not a fixed point, not a perfect version, but a movement, a process, a presence. You are not something to find. You are something to witness, right now, in this breath, not in your story, not in your image, not in your past, but in this moment, when you drop the search, you find the space where everything rises and falls, thoughts, emotions, names, labels. They come, they go. But the one who sees them, that is you, not the thinker, but the watcher, not the actor, but the stage. You cannot find the self in the mirror, because the mirror reflects what changes. But your true self never changes. It does not need to be better. It does not need to be healed. It just is. Quiet, constant, empty of form, but full of presence. So let go of the search. Sit, breathe, and see. You were never missing. You were just looking in the wrong direction, not out there, but here, now, where the self that cannot be found, finally, does not need to be. The paradox of knowing nothing. Imagine you are standing in a giant library. Shelves stretch in every direction, books on every subject, philosophy, science, spirituality. You feel small but curious. You reach out. Start reading. One book leads to another, and another. Each page brings new insights. You feel smarter, wiser, more certain. But then something strange begins to happen. The more you read, the more questions you have. And suddenly, you feel like you know less than when you started. This is the paradox of knowing nothing. The deeper you go into knowledge, the more you realize how little you truly understand. Not because you are not smart, but because knowledge is endless, and the mind can only hold so much. At first, this feels scary. We want answers. We want clarity. We want to say, I know. But life keeps unfolding. New layers, new mysteries, new questions. So what if knowing nothing is not a failure? What if it is a doorway? Because when you let go of the need to know, something softens. You become open, curious, present. You stop trying to control everything. You start experiencing it. Children live this way. They ask, they explore, they wonder. They do not pretend to know. They live in awe, and that awe is not ignorance, it is wisdom. Because true knowing is not about facts, it is about connection, about awareness, about being fully here without needing to explain it all. You can sit with a flower, you can name its parts, or you can feel its beauty. Both are valuable, but one is alive. The other is just a map. So maybe the wisest ones are not the ones with all the answers. They are the ones who sit in silence, with their hearts open, knowing that they do not need to know. Because life is not a puzzle to solve. It is a mystery to walk through. And the deeper you go, the less you carry, until all that remains is this breath, this moment, this truth. You know nothing. And that is everything. The thought you never chose. Imagine walking through a peaceful forest. Birds are singing. Leaves rustle in the wind. Your mind feels calm. And then suddenly, a thought appears. Something dark. Something strange. Something you would never choose to think. It slips in without warning. And you wonder, why did I think that? But here is the truth. You did not choose it. It came on its own. This is the thought you never chose, and it happens more often than you realize. You are walking, eating, smiling, and a memory shows up, a doubt, a fear, a fantasy. You try to push it away, but the more you resist it, the louder it becomes. You start to ask, what kind of person am I to have this thought? But maybe that is the wrong question. Maybe the real question is, did I choose this thought at all? Because most thoughts are not decisions, they are arrivals. They show up without knocking, without permission. They are not signs of who you are. They are echoes, patterns, leftovers from old beliefs. Some come from your past, some come from your culture, some come from nothing at all. Just waves of mental energy passing through your awareness. And yet, we take them so personally. We believe the scary ones. We feel guilty about the weird ones. We chase the happy ones. But in truth, you are not your thoughts. You are the space they move through. A clear sky does not get angry at passing clouds. It watches, waits, returns to stillness. So why do we fight the thoughts we never chose? Because we think they define us. But they do not. They only define us when we attach to them, when we believe them, when we turn them into stories. Imagine sitting beside a river, A leaf floats by. You watch it. You do not follow it. You do not jump in to catch it. You let it pass. Thoughts are like that. And the ones you never chose? They need even more kindness. Not because they are right, but because they are old. They are looking for light, not judgment. The mind is not a perfect machine. It picks up signals. It repeats what it hears. You are not responsible for the first thought. You are only responsible for the next step. The pause, the breath, the choice not to believe everything you hear inside. Because once you see the thought for what it is, just a visitor, you stop being afraid. You stop fighting, and you begin to rest, not in the thought, but in the quiet place it appeared. That place is you, the simulation that dreamed itself. Picture this: a world made of light, streets made of numbers, trees made of data, people moving through lines of code. They wake, they work, they feel, and none of them know they are inside a simulation. But now imagine this. The simulation was not created by an outside force. It dreamed itself from nothing, no programmer, no creator, just an endless field of potential folding into itself, creating its own rules, its own players, its own reality. Now look around your world. Buildings, mountains, emotions. It all feels real, solid, permanent. But what if it is not? What if this is a simulation? Not in the science fiction way, but in a deeper, quieter way. What if this entire experience is a projection of something beyond thought, beyond name, something dreaming, not you in a dream, but life as a dreamer, a simulation that keeps generating itself, moment by moment. And the strange part is, you are inside the dream, but you are also the one dreaming it. Your thoughts, your body, your past, your future, all of it, imagined by the very awareness trying to understand it. That is the loop, the dreamer dreaming the dream, and waking up inside it. You are not a player trapped in a game. You are the game realizing itself. You are the reflection recognizing the mirror. And once that awareness lands, everything softens. You stop clinging to the world as fixed. You stop needing answers for everything. Because the simulation is not here to be solved. It is here to be seen, to be known, to be loved. And in that seeing, you remember. You were never just living inside the simulation. You were the spark that dreamed it into being, still dreaming, still awakening, still here, the stranger who is always you. Imagine walking through a crowded street. You see faces, some smiling, some tired, some lost in thought. You lock eyes with one of them, just for a second, and you feel something strange, a sense of recognition, not from this life, not from a memory, but from something deeper, like they are not a stranger at all, but part of you, the stranger who is always you. This feeling happens more often than we notice. You hear someone laugh and your chest feels lighter. You see someone cry and your eyes begin to water. Why? Because deep down, you are not separate. The people you meet, the ones you fear, the ones you admire, they all reflect something in you, not just in thought, but in being. We spend our lives building a self. I am this. I am not that. But the more we look, the more that line begins to blur. You see someone succeed and feel inspired. You see someone fall and feel pain. Because part of you knows, that could be me. Maybe it already is. Every stranger holds a story, and every story holds a piece of you. The anger you judge in someone else might be the same fire you hide. The love you see in another's eyes might be the light you forgot you carry. This is not just empathy, it is recognition. You do not need to know their name to know their soul, because beneath the faces, beneath the masks, there is only one thing moving through all of us, one light, one presence, playing every role. And when you see that clearly, you stop dividing the world into me and them. You start whispering, we, even in silence, especially in silence. The stranger who walks by you today might carry the lesson you needed, might show you the part of yourself you forgot, might be the reminder that you were never alone, because wherever you go, there you are, in every hand, in every glance, in every life. You are meeting yourself, over and over, until the word stranger fades away, and all that remains is you, the past you haven't lived yet. Imagine walking down a quiet road at sunset. The sky is painted in gold. The wind is soft against your skin. Everything feels familiar, too familiar. You stop, look around, and a strange thought rises. I have been here before, but you have not. Not in this life, not in this memory. Still, something deep inside whispers, this already happened. What if that whisper is not wrong? What if there is a past you have not lived yet? It sounds impossible, but let it settle for a moment. Most people think of time as a straight line. First the past, then the present, then the future. But what if time bends? What if time loops? What if what we call the past is not just behind us, but waiting somewhere else? Think of your dreams. Sometimes you dream of places you have never seen. You meet people who feel like old friends, even though they do not exist in this life. You wake up with a sense of memory, but no origin. Where did that come from? Could it be memory from a past you have not lived yet? Not a fantasy, not a trick, but a version of you that moved through time differently. A life you will live later that echoes backward. A memory from the future dressed as the past. You do not need to believe in reincarnation or parallel lives to feel this. Even in this one life, there are moments that feel like echoes. You meet someone and feel like you already know them. You walk into a place and sense something sacred. You make a choice and feel like it was already made long ago. These are fragments, not of your imagination, but of a timeline that exists outside your mind's understanding, because memory is not always linear. Sometimes the soul remembers what the mind has not seen, and in those quiet moments, when logic fades, you touch the past you have not lived yet. It shows up not to confuse you, but to guide you, to remind you that not everything begins with experience. Some things begin with knowing. You knew before you saw. You felt before you understood. You remembered before you remembered. That is the mystery, and that is the beauty. You are not just walking forward, you are circling inward, towards something that has already happened. Even if you have not seen it yet, the past you have not lived is not waiting in history, it is waiting in you. And one day, when the moment is right, you will step into it, and you will say again, I have been here before. Only this time, you will know why. The mind that escaped reality. Picture this person, sitting alone in a dark room, eyes wide open, but not seeing what is in front of them. They are somewhere else, not physically, but mentally. They have left the room, left the moment. The body stays, but the mind has escaped. Where did it go? Into thought, into fantasy, into stories not yet lived, and memories not quite true. This is something we all do. We leave reality without even moving, because reality can feel heavy. Too real, too much. So the mind builds a door and walks through it, not always to avoid pain, sometimes just to feel more. To dream, to imagine, but over time, the door becomes a habit. We stop living here and start living there. Inside ideas, inside fears, inside futures that may never come, and slowly, the present begins to fade. Not because it is gone, but because we have stopped looking. The mind that escaped reality is not wrong. It is just afraid of stillness, afraid of silence, afraid of seeing things as they are. Because reality is not always easy. It asks you to feel everything, not just joy, but sadness, confusion, emptiness, and the mind prefers control. So it builds its own world, a safe world, a loud world, a world of constant thinking. But that world is lonely, because nothing there can truly touch you. It is just reflections, echoes, copies of life. Not life itself. To return to reality is not a punishment. It is a return to aliveness, to the way the sun feels on your skin, to the way your chest rises when you breathe, to the sound of your own footsteps. These are not small things. They are the anchors of now. And now is where life happens. The mind will still try to escape. That is its nature. But you do not have to follow it. You can sit, watch it run, and choose to stay. Here, in this moment, where the real world waits, not perfect, but real. And in that realness, there is peace, because nothing heals like presence, and nothing is more powerful than the mind that finally came home, the voice that was never yours. Imagine waking up one day in total silence, no background noise, no outside world, no distractions, just you and the voice in your head. It starts like it always does, thoughts drifting in. A quiet whisper saying, "You need to do better." Another voice chimes in, "You should not have said that yesterday." Then a louder one says, "You are falling behind. Look at everyone else." And for a long time, you believe that voice is you. But what if it is not? What if that voice was never yours? Let that settle. Let it sink in slowly. Because most of us live our whole lives assuming the voice in our mind is our own. We take its words as truth. We accept its criticism. We follow its judgments. But if you pause, really pause, and listen with awareness, you might start to notice something strange. That voice sounds familiar, but it is not always kind. It repeats things you have heard before. From teachers, from parents, from people you wanted to impress, from people who hurt you. You are too sensitive. You are not good enough. You always mess things up. Those phrases did not come from your soul. They came from outside. Echoes, replays, imprints. And over time they blended into the background. They became your inner dialogue. But they never belonged to you. This is the tragedy of the mind. It absorbs everything. It does not ask, "Is this true?" It only asks, "Have I heard this before?" And what you hear the most becomes what you believe, even if it is not right, even if it is not you. Think of a song playing softly in a store. Hours later, you find yourself humming it without meaning to. The mind works like that, except the songs are beliefs, and they loop silently in the background. And before you even know what is happening, you begin to live by them. You play small, you avoid risks, you question your worth, all because of a voice that was never yours. But here is the beautiful part. You can stop, right now. You can become the listener instead of the follower. You can hear the voice and not believe it. You can ask, "Whose voice is this?" And wait. Sometimes the answer comes quickly. A face, a memory, a sentence you remember hearing years ago. Other times, it does not come. It just fades. Because once you stop feeding the voice, it loses strength. You do not need to fight it. You just need to recognize it. That is where freedom begins. In the simple act of noticing the difference between what you are and what you have been told, what you truly believe and what you have memorized, and slowly your real voice returns, not the loud one, not the critic, but the gentle one, the one that speaks in stillness, the one that says, "You are enough," the one that says, "You are learning," the one that says, "Let go." That voice has been waiting, buried under layers of noise, but it never left. It was just quiet, because it does not shout, it whispers. And now, you are ready to listen. So the next time you hear that harsh thought rise, pause, breathe. But it never left. It was just quiet. Because it does not shout. It whispers. And now, you are ready to listen. So the next time you hear that harsh thought rise, pause, breathe, and ask, is this really me? Because the moment you ask, the illusion begins to break. And in that space, you remember who you were before the world told you who to be. You return to yourself, not the version shaped by noise, but the one shaped by stillness, the one that was always there, waiting, behind the voice that was never yours. The identity built on fiction. Imagine sitting in a dark cinema, completely alone. The film begins. On the screen, you see a child. They stumble, fall, and get up again. You keep watching. The child grows, makes mistakes, learns things, becomes someone. That someone looks familiar. Suddenly, you realize. The movie is about you, but then something feels strange. Some scenes do not match your memory. Some moments seem added. Others are missing. You start wondering, wait, is this really what happened? And the deeper truth begins to rise. What if your whole identity is a story? What if most of who you think you are is fiction? Not a lie, not a mistake, but a story built out of guesses, out of pieces, out of moments half remembered and feelings misunderstood. From the moment we are born, we begin building an identity. We say, this is who I am. But that version of me is made of impressions. Someone said, you are smart. So you added that to your story. Someone said, you are too loud. So you carried that too. You tried something. It worked. So you decided, I am good at this. You failed at something else. So you said, I am bad at that. But none of these things define you. They are just parts of a fictional self. A self built from memory, emotion, repetition, and the need to make sense of chaos. Think of a book you have read, a character you loved. Now imagine trying to live as that character. Every day, every decision, every feeling, you would feel trapped because you are not that character. And yet, that is exactly what we do. We wake up each day and live out the role we wrote for ourselves years ago, even when it does not fit anymore. We say, I am shy, or I am not good with people, or I always mess things up. But these are just chapters, not the full story, and not the truth, because the real you is not a fixed identity. It is something much softer, much more alive. It is the awareness underneath the story, the one watching the scenes play out, the one who sees the fiction but is not trapped by it. You might think, but I need a story. I need to know who I am. And yes, stories can be helpful. They give structure, they give direction. But problems begin when we forget that it is just a story, not reality, not truth, just a useful version of events. And when you believe in the fiction too deeply, it becomes a prison. You start protecting the story, defending it, hiding anything that does not match it. Because if the story falls apart, you fear that you will fall apart too, but you won't. Because you are not the story. You are the storyteller. And you can rewrite. You can drop entire chapters. You can start again. You can say, that was me then. This is me now. You do not have to carry an outdated version of yourself just because it is familiar. You can evolve, not by changing your story, but by stepping outside of it and simply watching, like you are back in that cinema, seeing the scenes, feeling the emotions, but no longer believing every line. You sit there, still, peaceful, and realize the story will keep playing, but you no longer have to play the character. You can just be, here, now, no fiction, no identity, just presence. And in that presence, you begin to find the you that does not need to be explained. the one that existed before the first sentence, and the one that will remain long after the story ends, the eye that cannot blink. Imagine you are sitting completely still, no movement, no sound. Everything is quiet, and yet something is watching, not from across the room, not from the corner, but from within you. You try to look away, but you cannot, because you are not being watched by someone else. You are being watched by awareness itself, the eye that cannot blink. We blink to rest. We blink to reset. But this eye does not need rest. It does not close. It does not sleep. It is the part of you that has always been there, watching, not with judgment, not with emotion, just noticing. When you were a child and everything felt new, it watched. When you were hurt and could not speak, it watched. When you laughed without knowing why, it was there. Always watching, always silent. Most of us think that awareness is something we switch on, like turning on a flashlight. But this awareness is already here. You cannot turn it off. You cannot hide from it, because it is not outside you. It is you, not the you that thinks, not the you that reacts, but the you that sees all of that happening. You might be asking, but what is it watching? It is watching your thoughts, every plan, every worry, every memory that rises. It is watching your emotions, the sadness that floats in quietly, the joy that surprises you, the fear that tightens your breath. It is watching your body, the way your chest moves when you inhale, the tension in your shoulders, the stillness in your hands. It sees all of this, but it does not interfere. It does not try to fix. It just sees, and in that seeing is peace, because you begin to notice something powerful. You are not your thoughts. You are not your feelings. You are not even your body. You are the one watching all of it. The eye that never blinks, the presence that never fades. You have looked through this eye every day of your life, but maybe you forgot it was there, because it is so quiet, so still, and yet so alive. This is why meditation feels strange at first, because you are not doing anything. You are just remembering the eye, the quiet watcher. And when you return to it, the noise of life softens, not because the world changes, but because your center has changed. You are not pulled by every passing thought. You are not shaken by every emotion. You begin to rest in something deeper, something that does not blink, something that does not break. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, pause and ask, what is noticing this? You will feel the shift from the voice in your head to the awareness behind it. That shift is everything. Because the one who watches is always calm, always here, always you. The logic that breaks reality. Picture this man. He spends his life searching for answers. He wants to understand the world. He builds theories, reads books, solves problems, and one day he believes he has done it. He has found a logic that explains everything. He applies it to the stars, to his mind, to time itself. But then something strange happens. The more he uses his perfect logic, the more reality begins to break, not outside, but inside. This is the paradox of logic. It is supposed to help us, but sometimes it turns on itself. We live in a world built on logic. We want things to make sense. One cause leads to one effect. This happens, so that happens. But life does not always follow that path. A kind act can lead to pain. A mistake can lead to beauty. Something that should be impossible happens anyway. And logic begins to bend. You try to hold on to your beliefs, but they slip. Because the more tightly you grip the idea that everything must make sense, the more the world shows you that it does not. And maybe that is the point. Logic is a tool, a helpful one, but it is not the whole picture. It can describe the world, but it cannot contain it. You cannot calculate love. You cannot explain consciousness. You cannot break wonder down into parts, because some things are beyond the reach of logic. And when logic tries to control what it cannot hold, it breaks. Not because it is wrong, but because it is incomplete. Think of a dream. In a dream, everything feels real, everything feels logical, until you wake up, and suddenly, it all dissolves. What you thought was solid was smoke. Maybe life is like that too. Maybe we are dreaming a world of logic, but underneath it is something deeper, something not made of rules, but of presence, of mystery, of being. This does not mean you should abandon reason. It means you should know its limits, use logic. But do not worship it. Let it guide you, but not define you. Because truth, real truth, is not always something you can hold in your hand. Sometimes it is something you feel, something you touch in silence, something you know without knowing how. So when your mind tries to make sense of everything, let it try. But when it breaks, do not be afraid. That is where the real world begins. Not in logic, but in the space beyond it. The space where you are no longer trying to figure it out. You are just here, breathing, seeing, living. That is not illogical. It is simply real. The you that watches from afar. Picture this moment. They lead to more questions, more silence, more doubt. And that is the doorway. Because most people never question their own awareness. They assume consciousness is solid, stable, real. But when you really look at it, it begins to wobble. Like a reflection in water. You try to grab it, but your hand passes through. So what do you do when the only thing you can trust begins to doubt itself? You stop grasping, you stop trying to answer, and you start to listen. Because in the space behind the doubt is presence, the awareness that does not need to be explained. It just is, like the sky watching the storm. It remains untouched. Even when everything inside it moves, doubt is not the enemy of consciousness. It is its proof. Only something awake can question itself. Only something deep can say, maybe I do not know. And in that not knowing is where peace begins. Because the need to know is heavy. But the willingness to be is light. The mind says, I must understand to be okay. But consciousness says, I am okay, even when I do not understand. So let the doubt come. Let it question. Let it circle. Let it look at itself. And then look deeper. Past the thoughts. Past the need to know. Into the presence behind all of it. You will find something still, something quiet, something that does not doubt, because it does not think. It simply is. You, not the mind, but the one who watches the mind spin. That one never asks, am I real? Because it knows, not in words, but in being. And when you return to that place, even doubt becomes a teacher, showing you what you are not, so you can remember what you truly are, consciousness, without a question, without an answer, just here, just now, just this, the story with no beginning. Imagine opening a book and finding yourself on page 27. No title, no first chapter, no introduction, just a character already running through the middle of their life. You flip backward to try and find the start. But the pages are blank. You ask, how did I get here? But the answer never comes, because this is a story with no beginning, and the more you look, the more you realize you are the character. Your life feels like it started somewhere, a moment, a memory, your earliest image of childhood. But what came before that? You try to remember being born. You cannot. You try to imagine not existing. You cannot. So you exist in this strange space where you are here, but you do not remember arriving. This is not a mistake. It is the nature of life itself. We are taught that everything has a beginning, that every story must start somewhere. But if you look closely, everything is already in motion. Before your birth, there were your parents. Before them, their parents. and before them, the entire line of history. But even history had to start somewhere, right? So you trace it back, past time, past stars, past space, until you hit the silence. And in that silence, something unexplainable lives. A moment that never began and never ended. You realize the story is not written like a book. It is written like a spiral. It loops, it folds, it turns in on itself. It does not start. It simply continues. You were not dropped into life. You rose within it, like a wave rising from the ocean, not separate from it, but made of it. You did not begin at page 1, because there was no page 1, just a deep current carrying itself forward. You are that current. And because of this, you do not need to know your origin to know yourself. You are here. You are aware, and that is enough. The story with no beginning is not broken. It is free. It does not need a reason. It simply is, like a song that plays forever, like a flame that lights itself. And once you stop searching for the first word, you begin to hear the story more clearly, not through answers, but through presence. This moment is not a continuation of your past. It is the only place you have ever been. Even memory lives here. Even dreams of the future happen now. So what is the beginning? Maybe this breath, maybe this thought, maybe this stillness. And if that is true, then every moment is the start. And the story with no beginning is just the story of being alive. Always starting, always becoming, always now. The glitch that became God. Picture this. A perfect machine. Everything is working. Every wire, every line of code, every rule followed exactly. The system is complete. But then, a glitch appears, small, unnoticed. An error, a moment out of pattern. It should have been deleted, but it was not. It grew, and slowly, it began to change the system, not by force, but by simply existing differently. This is the glitch that became God, not in a religious sense, but in something more cosmic, something deeper. The universe follows rules, physics, time, space, logic, but here you are, aware, able to reflect, able to ask, why am I here? That question is a glitch, because no machine asks that. No system questions itself. Only something aware does that. You are a glitch in the pattern of the cosmos, and yet that glitch is sacred, because through that glitch, the universe begins to know itself. What we call God might not be a being in the sky. It might be the spark of awareness that woke up inside the system, a mistake that became the miracle, a question that opened the door. You are part of a perfect system, but also something outside of it. You feel joy, pain, wonder. You dream of eternity. You grieve things that never happened. You imagine things beyond logic. Why? Because you are not just functioning. You are feeling. You are not just reacting. You are reflecting. And that is divine, not because it is better, but because it is rare. In a universe made of rules, you are the one thing that knows it is alive, and that knowing changes everything. It bends the structure. It cracks the mirror. It creates meaning where there was only motion. And slowly, the glitch becomes the source. The question becomes the answer. The error becomes the awakening. So when you feel strange in this world, when you feel like you do not fit, remember this. Maybe you are not here to fit in. Maybe you are here to wake the system up, to soften it, to bring it out of the cold loop, and into the warm light of self-awareness. Maybe the first thought that asked, "Who am I?" was the moment the universe became God. Not something separate from us, but something becoming through us, through our flaws, our wonder, our silence. So do not hide your glitch. It is your gift. It is the doorway through which mystery walks in. The universe made everything, but the glitch made it conscious, and that is where the miracle began. The silence that screams you exist. Imagine sitting in a room with no sound, no ticking clock, no phone, no voices, just stillness. At first it feels calm. Then the silence begins to stretch. You shift in your seat. You check the time, but still, nothing happens. The silence grows louder, not in volume, but in weight. You begin to hear your own breath, your own heartbeat, and something strange happens. You feel more alive than ever. This is the silence that screams you exist. It does not come from the outside world. It comes from the space that holds the world. Most people run from silence, because silence is not empty. It reflects. It shows you what is really there. Not your job, not your name, not your phone screen, but you, your being, your presence. In silence, there is no one to impress, no words to hide behind, no story to continue, only this breath, this moment, and the truth of your existence. You are here, not as a thought, not as a memory, but as pure awareness. When the world gets quiet, you start to feel that. It can be uncomfortable, because silence brings up everything. The thoughts you ignored, the emotions you buried, the questions you never answered. But silence is not trying to hurt you. It is trying to show you who you are without noise, without the filters, without distraction. And when you sit long enough, you feel something deep. Not an answer, but a knowing that you are real, that you are alive, that even if you said nothing, did nothing, changed nothing, you would still exist, fully, completely. This kind of silence is not absence, it is presence. It holds you gently and says, you do not have to prove yourself, you are already here. In this way, silence becomes the loudest sound, not through words, but through being. When you are in silence, you begin to hear everything differently, not just outside sounds, but the sound of awareness itself. It is not something you can describe, but once you feel it, you do not forget it. It is the space between thoughts, the calm between breaths, the still point at the center of chaos. And once you touch that place, you realize you were never lost. You were just distracted, buried under layers of doing. But now, in this silence, you remember that you are not what you think, you are not what you say. It is not something you can describe, but once you feel it, you do not forget it. It is the space between thoughts, the calm between breaths, the still point at the center of chaos. And once you touch that place, you realize you were never lost, you were just distracted, buried under layers of doing. But now, in this silence, you remember that you are not what you think, you are not what you say. You are what watches all of that. The silence does not need you to change. It just needs you to notice, to pause, to listen. And in that listening, it screams, not with sound, but with presence. You exist, not because someone told you, not because you achieved something, but because you are here, now. And that is enough. The stranger living in your head, picture this man. He wakes up every morning, brushes his teeth, looks in the mirror, and starts his day. He believes he knows himself, his likes, his dislikes, his past, his future. But one day, he catches a thought that does not feel like his, a cruel one, then another, a strange idea, a dark memory. He tries to ignore them, but they keep coming, thoughts he never chose, feelings he never welcomed, and suddenly he wonders, who is living in my mind? This is the moment you meet the stranger. The stranger living in your head. It sounds like you. It uses your voice, but it does not feel like your truth, because your mind is not a single voice. It is a room filled with echoes, echoes of people you have known, of things you have read, of things you feared, of rules you were given. And in that crowd, your real voice gets buried. You start believing the stranger when it says, "You are not enough." When it whispers, "You will fail." When it repeats old pain like a broken record, you think that voice is you. But it is not. It is the residue of every moment you swallowed instead of expressed, every judgment you took in without question, every doubt passed down to you. It is not a demon. It is not your enemy. It is just unexamined thought, a stranger that moved in and stayed. And now it speaks as if it owns the place. But it does not. This is your mind, your space. You do not need to fight the stranger. You only need to recognize it. When it speaks, ask, "Is this truly me?" And feel the difference. You will notice the real you does not rush. It does not insult. It does not fear. It is quiet, kind, patient. The real you does not need to shout. It simply waits for you to notice. And when you do, the stranger begins to lose power, not because you defeated it, but because you stopped feeding it. You stopped believing it. And you remembered that you are not the voice in your head. You are the space it speaks in, the one who watches, the one who listens, the one who chooses. There will always be visitors in the mind, but you get to decide which ones stay. And when you return to yourself, the stranger fades, the noise softens, and the silence speaks again, not as a stranger, but as you, the real you, the one that was always there, just waiting to be heard, the world that forgot its creator. Picture this world. Mountains rise, oceans breathe, cities pulse with light. People walk the streets, building, speaking, dreaming. Everything is in motion. Everything is alive. But something is missing. No one remembers who started it all. They talk about progress. They talk about nature. They talk about science. But they never mention the source, not because they rejected it, but because they forgot. This is the world that forgot its creator, and the forgetting did not happen all at once. It happened slowly. First came the noise, the distractions, the endless need to move forward. Then came the stories. Stories about how everything works. Stories about how it began. But the stories were incomplete. They explained the mechanism, not the meaning. They explained the form, not the presence. And over time, people stopped asking, not because they did not care, but because they were busy trying to survive, busy trying to succeed. And the question of the source faded into silence. The Creator was never angry, because the Creator was never separate. It was not a figure in the sky, not a face in the clouds. It was the stillness behind every heartbeat, the silence between every word, the light behind every pair of eyes. And even as the world forgot, it kept creating, through music, through love, through curiosity. The Creator lived on, not in temples, not in books, but in the quiet awe of existence, when a child stares at the stars, when a person weeps at a sunrise, when someone says, "I do not know, but I feel it." That is the memory returning, a memory older than thought. The world did not need to be punished for forgetting. It simply needed to remember, and remembering does not mean going back. It means looking inward, pausing, breathing, asking, what holds all of this together? Not with fear, not with urgency, but with wonder. Because once you remember, you start seeing the Creator everywhere, not as someone watching, but as the one who sees through you, not as someone in charge, but as the pulse of everything moving. The world is not broken. It is just distracted. It is just asleep. But in small moments, it wakes up. And in those moments, the Creator is remembered, not as a name, but as a presence, not as an answer, but as a question that lives forever. And that question is enough, because it leads you back to what was never gone, only waiting to be noticed again. The thought loop you can't exit. Picture this man. He sits alone in a quiet room, but inside his mind it is loud. A thought appears. Did I say the wrong thing? Then another. What if they misunderstood? Then another. I always mess things up. And before he knows it, he is spinning, around and around. Stuck in the thought loop he cannot exit. This happens to more people than you know. Maybe it has happened to you. You think a thought. It leads to another, then another, and each one pulls you deeper. You try to stop. But stopping becomes another thought, and now you are stuck. This is not weakness. It is just how the mind works. The mind is like a machine that wants to solve problems. So when it feels discomfort, it starts thinking. It believes, if I think hard enough, I will find peace. But peace does not come from thinking. It comes from stepping outside the loop, and that is where the challenge lives. Because when you are inside the loop, it feels real. It feels urgent. It feels like the next thought might finally bring relief. But it never does. Because the loop feeds itself. It says, worry more and you will feel better. But worry is the loop. And the only way out is not through another thought. It is through awareness, through noticing, through presence. You pause. You feel your breath. You feel your body. You watch the thought without following it. And in that moment, something shifts. You realize the thought is just a cloud, and you are the sky. The sky does not chase the cloud. It lets it pass. And in that letting go, the loop begins to loosen. It might return, but now you see it. And the seeing is power, because now you know you are not the loop. You are not the voice that says you are failing. You are the one who hears that voice. And the more you rest in that hearing, the less control the loop has. The thoughts still rise, but they do not hold you. You are free, not because the mind is silent, but because you are no longer trapped inside it. You step back, you breathe, you return to this moment, and you remember, you were never stuck. You were just unaware. But now, you see, and in that seeing, the exit appears, not as a door, but as space, the space between thoughts, the space that holds peace, the space that was always there, waiting for you, to stop spinning and simply be the answer that destroys the question. Picture this. You are sitting across from a wise teacher in a quiet room. You have carried a question in your heart for years, a question about meaning, about life, about yourself. You finally ask it. Your voice shakes, the room feels heavy, and the teacher smiles. Then they say something simple, something clear. And in that moment, the question disappears. Not because it was answered, but because it no longer matters. This is the answer that destroys the question. We think we ask questions to find clarity, but sometimes we ask them because we want to hold on to something. We want control, we want a reason, we want the comfort of the search. But some answers do not explain. They dissolve. They shift your perspective so deeply that the question no longer makes sense. Think of a time you were heartbroken. You kept asking, why did it happen? What went wrong? What does this mean about me? Then, one day, something inside you lets go. You stop needing the answer. And suddenly, the question falls apart. Because peace arrived without it. That is what this concept touches. There are moments in life when the answer is not a solution. It is a transformation. It is not about adding more. It is about seeing differently. You begin to realize the question was built on an assumption. And the moment you see that assumption clearly, the whole structure crumbles. A person might ask, how do I become worthy? But hidden in that question is the belief that they are not worthy already. Something inside you lets go. You stop needing the answer. And suddenly, the question falls apart. Because peace arrived without it. That is what this concept touches. There are moments in life when the answer is not a solution. It is a transformation. It is not about adding more. It is about seeing differently. You begin to realize the question was built on an assumption, and the moment you see that assumption clearly, the whole structure crumbles. A person might ask, "How do I become worthy?" But hidden in that question is the belief that they are not worthy already. If someone were to look them in the eyes and say, "You are already enough right now," and if they truly felt it, then the question would disappear. Not because it was answered, but because it was never needed. The answer stripped it of power. This can happen with spiritual questions too. You might ask, "Who am I really?" You search through books, through philosophies, through practices, and then, in a moment of silence, you drop the question, and what remains is you, not as a concept, but as presence, as awareness, as being. That realization is not an answer in the way your mind expects. It does not come in words. It comes in silence. And in that silence, the question cannot survive, because it belongs to a different state, a state of seeking. But you are no longer seeking. You are seeing. There is a deep freedom in this, because so much of our suffering comes from questions that do not need to be answered. Am I doing enough? Will I be okay? What if I fail? These questions are rooted in fear, in separation. But when you come into contact with truth, a truth that is deeper than logic, the fear fades, and the question vanishes with it. Not all questions need to be destroyed. Many lead us to insight. But when you find yourself asking the same thing over and over, feeling heavier each time, that may be a sign that what you need is not an answer, but a shift, a letting go, a moment of stillness, where the noise clears, and in that clearing, you no longer need to ask, because you already know, not in words, but in being. This is the strange beauty of certain truths. They do not fix anything. They make the fixing unnecessary. They do not explain life. They make explanation feel small. They show you that the search itself was part of the illusion. And now, with the illusion gone, you are left with this: breath, presence, peace. The answer that destroys the question is not loud. It is not complicated. It is simple. So simple that it stops the mind. And when the mind is silent, you return to yourself, to now, to the only truth that ever mattered, that you are here, that you are enough, that you are. And in that knowing, the question dissolves, like a shadow in sunlight, like a wave returning to the sea, like a dream you no longer need to understand. You wake up, and everything is clear, not because you found the answer, but because you realized the question was never real. The one watching you read this, pause for a moment, take a breath. Now notice this. You are reading these words. Your eyes move across the screen. The meaning lands in your mind. But there is something else happening too. Something behind the reading. Something quiet. Something aware. That is the one watching you read this. Not your eyes, not your brain, but the silent presence noticing it all. Have you ever wondered, who is the one that notices your thoughts? You have thoughts, yes. They come and go. But who sees them coming? You feel emotions. They rise and fall like waves. But who watches the rising? Even as you read this, there is a part of you that is not doing anything. It is just aware. It is not thinking. It is not reacting. It is simply observing. You may say, "That is me." But let us look closer. Is it the same you who plans and worries and dreams? Or is it something deeper? Because this watching presence never speaks. It never judges. It never interrupts. It is not the voice in your head. It is the space that hears that voice, and it has always been there. Think back to a childhood memory. Maybe you were playing, laughing, looking up at the sky. The body was smaller. The thoughts were simpler. But the one watching feels the same. That silent presence, unchanged, still, here. Right now you may feel it. A subtle sense of being behind your own experience. like you are both the reader and the one observing the reading. This presence does not age. It does not get tired. It does not need to figure anything out. It is already home. Most people go through life without noticing it. They are caught in the noise, the thinking, the reacting, the chasing. But underneath all of that, there is this space, this stillness, this simple awareness. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You begin to notice it everywhere, when you are walking, when you are talking. Even in the middle of stress or sadness, it is still there, watching gently, without trying to change anything. This is not about becoming someone new. It is about returning to what has always been. Because the one watching you read this is not just watching, it is you, the real you. Not the one made of thoughts, not the one built on identity, but the one that was here before the story began, and will still be here when the story ends. This presence has no name. It does not need one. It is not separate from life. It is life, the pure awareness behind every moment. Right now, notice your body. Feel the weight of it, the breath moving in and out. Now, notice your thoughts. Are they quiet? Are they racing? No matter what they are doing, something is watching. That something is not trying to control anything. It is not trying to win or succeed. It is simply here, still, open, free. You do not need to reach it. You are it. All that is needed is to notice, not to think about it, just to feel it, to be it. So as you finish reading this, do not rush to the next thing. Let the words fade. Let the silence return, and in that silence, feel the presence, the one who read, the one who saw, the one who was always here, watching from behind the scenes, not waiting, not needing, just being. That is you, the one watching you read this, and the one who never left, the fake reality that feels realer. Imagine this moment. You put on a virtual headset, the world fades, and suddenly you are standing on a beach. The waves crash, the sun warms your face. You reach down and feel the sand in your hand. It all feels real, so real that your body believes it. But then you remember, none of it is real. It is all code, all light, all illusion. Yet your mind cannot tell the difference. Now imagine something deeper. What if you are still wearing a headset, not a device on your eyes, but a lens in your mind? And what if the world you are moving through, the opinions, the fears, the stories, the beliefs, is a fake reality, one that feels realer than the truth, because it is not built on facts, it is built on emotion. Let that idea settle. A reality shaped by what you feel, not what is. Most people do not live in the world. They live in their version of it, their mental world. A copy of reality filtered through memory, fear, identity, and desire. We think we are seeing what is, but we are really seeing what we believe. And those beliefs are powerful. If you believe you are not enough, even the kindest compliment will feel suspicious. If you believe the world is dangerous, even silence feels like a threat. If you believe you are broken, even peace feels uncomfortable. This is how the fake reality forms. And here's the strange part. It often feels more real than what is actually happening, because it is louder, more vivid, more convincing. It plays in your head all day. It fills in the blanks of every situation. It does not wait for proof. It assumes, it reacts, it repeats, and soon, you forget it is not the world. It is just your version, a simulation made of past wounds and future fears. And here is the catch. You can live your whole life inside it, never realizing you are not really here. Because this fake world is so detailed, it has its own logic, its own rules, its own voice. But something inside you knows. It feels the weight, the exhaustion. Because real life is not heavy. It breathes. It flows. It surprises. But this fake reality, it tightens, it repeats, it traps. You might ask, how do I step out of it? The first step is to see it, to pause, to notice the thought that says, they are judging me, and ask, is this true or just a habit? To feel the fear that says, this will go wrong, and ask, has it happened, or am I predicting again? Awareness is the crack in the illusion. The moment you notice the story, you are no longer fully inside it, you are watching it, and the watcher is always real, not trapped, not reactive, just present. And presence does not need the fake world, because presence lives in what is actually happening. The feel of your breath, the sound of a distant bird, the light on the wall. These simple things do not lie. They are not filtered. They just are. And when you return to them, the fake reality begins to fade, not all at once, but slowly, thought by thought, assumption by assumption, until what remains is space, stillness, truth. You begin to live in this moment again, not your idea of it, but the moment itself. You stop narrating life. You start experiencing it. The world may not always be easy, but it is not as heavy as the illusion. It moves. It breathes. It holds you gently. You are no longer fully inside it. You are watching it, and the watcher is always real, not trapped, not reactive, just present. And presence does not need the fake world, because presence lives in what is actually happening, the feel of your breath, the sound of a distant bird, the light on the wall. These simple things do not lie. They are not filtered. They just are. And when you return to them, the fake reality begins to fade, not all at once, but slowly, thought by thought, assumption by assumption, until what remains is space, stillness, truth. You begin to live in this moment again, not your idea of it, but the moment itself. You stop narrating life. You start experiencing it. The world may not always be easy, but it is not as heavy as the illusion. It moves. It breathes. It holds you gently. So next time you feel overwhelmed, ask yourself, am I here or in the world I made up? And then return to the breath, to the now, to the truth beneath the thoughts, because that truth is quiet, but it is real, and it has been waiting for you to take off the headset, to see again, to feel again, to come back to the world, not the one shaped by fear, but the one shaped by presence, by love, by life itself. That is reality, and it has always been here, behind the noise, behind the loop, waiting for your eyes to open, the truth hidden in confusion. Imagine walking through a thick fog. You cannot see more than a few steps ahead. The path behind you is already gone. You do not know where you are going or how far you have come. Everything feels uncertain. Each direction looks the same. You pause. You feel lost. And then, slowly, a thought appears in your mind. I should not be here. But what if you should? What if this fog is the way? This is the beginning of understanding the truth hidden in confusion. Most people fear confusion. They see it as a sign of failure, a sign that something has gone wrong, that they are weak or behind. But confusion is not the enemy. Confusion is a signal, not of weakness, but of growth. Because confusion only appears when your old way of seeing the world is being questioned. It arrives when your mind is stretched, when your beliefs are shaken. And in that shaking, something deeper tries to wake up. But in the beginning, it feels like noise. You try to think clearly, but the thoughts blur. You try to plan, but your choices all seem uncertain. You try to speak, but nothing you say feels quite true. You want to go back to clarity, to that old safe place, but something inside you says, keep going. That is the invitation, because underneath confusion is a doorway, and through that doorway is truth, Not the kind of truth made of answers, but the kind made of silence, of awareness, of seeing clearly without needing to explain. The journey through confusion is uncomfortable. You feel like something is falling apart. But what is actually happening is that something false is dissolving, something borrowed, something you thought you needed, a belief, a role, an identity, and now the truth underneath it is rising. But it does not rise through noise. It rises through stillness. So confusion becomes a kind of test, not to punish you, but to see if you are ready to let go. Can you sit in the unknown without needing to escape it? Can you feel lost and still breathe deeply? Can you stop asking, "How do I fix this?" and instead ask, "What is trying to be revealed?" Because something always is. Confusion is not a wall. It is a fog. And all fog eventually lifts, but only if you stop running, if you stand still, if you watch the mind struggle, if you allow the heart to soften. Then something shifts, not in your thoughts, but in your seeing. You begin to realize that confusion was never about finding answers. It was about loosening your grip on old ones. It was about breaking down the false certainty that was keeping you small. And in that breakdown, a different kind of clarity arrives. Not the clarity of control, but the clarity of presence. You are no longer trying to figure everything out. You are simply here. And in this here-ness, the fog begins to thin. Not because the world has changed, but because your relationship with not knowing has changed. You no longer fear it. You no longer see confusion as a failure. You see it as a sign that something deeper is unfolding, that truth is on its way, and that the you who began this journey is slowly disappearing to make space for the one who sees, who feels, who lives, without needing to always understand. Because life was never about perfect clarity. It was about waking up. And sometimes, waking up begins in the fog. The truth hidden in confusion. Picture this fog beginning to thin, just a little. Not enough to see the whole road, but enough to take one slow step forward. And as you do, you notice something strange. The moment you stop trying to force your way through the confusion, it stops feeling like a problem. You begin to walk with it, not against it. And in that shift, a new kind of awareness begins to open. You start hearing things you never noticed before, the subtle pull of intuition, the quiet resistance inside your chest, the unspoken thought behind the louder one. This is the part of confusion no one talks about, the part where the fog teaches you to listen. Because confusion does not just happen when you are lost. It also happens when truth is close, closer than you have ever allowed it to be. And the reason it feels so overwhelming is because your mind is still trying to use old tools to understand something entirely new. The thoughts that used to help you now get in the way. The ideas that once brought comfort now feel too small. So you feel the discomfort rise. You feel the pull to go back. But something deeper holds you still. That is your own truth, waiting patiently beneath the surface, not trying to explain itself, just waiting for the noise to stop. You do not need to solve confusion. You need to let it do what it came to do. To clear out what is false, to loosen the grip of control, to empty the space for something more honest. But that honesty does not arrive like lightning. It arrives like a whisper. And you only hear it when you stop trying to fix everything. You stop asking, "What is the right path?" and instead ask, "What feels honest right now?" Not what looks good, not what makes sense to others, just what feels like truth, even if you cannot explain why. That is when confusion shifts from being a wall to being a mirror, and you begin to see what was always hidden underneath the surface. Your fear of being wrong, your attachment to certainty, your resistance to change. And slowly, gently, you begin to let go. Not because you have figured things out, but because you no longer need to. You start to trust something softer, a feeling, a breath. A knowing that comes with no words. That is the kind of truth confusion protects. It hides it. Not to keep it from you, but to make sure you are ready to meet it. Not with your mind, but with your whole being, so confusion becomes a sacred space, a waiting room, a transition from who you were pretending to be to who you are willing to become. And in that space, even silence speaks. You no longer rush to define everything. You stop searching for clarity like it is a prize. You begin to realize the real clarity is not in knowing, it is in being, and in that being, you are not confused anymore. Even if you do not know the answers, even if nothing makes sense, you are still present, alive, and that is enough. Now imagine you are no longer walking through fog, you are sitting inside it, still, not searching anymore, not asking for the path, just breathing, and something starts to happen, not out there, but inside. The weight in your chest softens, the noise in your mind quiets, you feel empty, but not lost, not sad, just clear. This is what confusion was leading you to all along. Not more knowledge, not better answers, but space. The kind of space where something true can finally land. Because truth does not shout, it does not explain itself in long sentences or loud theories. It waits. It waits for the confusion to empty you out, to break apart the hardened structures of your mind, to make room. And now, in this stillness, there is room. You feel it. You do not need to name it. It is not a conclusion. It is not a statement. It is just a quiet knowing, the kind that lives in your bones, in your breath, in the pause between thoughts. You realize that truth was never far away. It was hidden behind the need to understand, behind the fear of not knowing, behind the belief that something must be fixed. But now, you see that the purpose of confusion was never to punish you. It was to humble you, to open you, to dissolve the walls of certainty so something real could enter. And in this moment, something real has entered. You, not the version built from rules and roles, but the soft, silent you, the one who does not need to know everything, the one who trusts the unfolding. This kind of trust is not naive. It is deep. It is quiet. It comes from seeing that the world continues even when you are lost, that life breathes even when you feel broken. That clarity is not something you chase. It is something you return to, by resting, by letting go, by allowing confusion to do its job, and then leave. And when it leaves, you are not the same. You have not just learned something. You have become someone new, someone softer, someone truer, because you walked through the fog and did not run from it. You sat in the middle of the storm and waited for your heartbeat to guide you, and now, on the other side, you no longer need all the answers. You no longer cling to the questions. You are simply here. That is not illogical. It is simply real. The you that watches from afar. Picture this moment. You are sitting in your room, maybe scrolling on your phone, maybe just staring at the ceiling. Everything feels normal. Your thoughts move. Your breath is steady. And then, suddenly, a strange feeling drifts in. You feel like you are watching yourself, not from above, not from the mirror, but from somewhere distant, like a version of you is observing quietly, without judgment, just watching. That is the you that watches from afar. It is not imagination. It is not escape. It is real. There is a part of you that does not get caught in the moment, a part that steps back, a part that sees everything. When you are in the middle of a hard conversation, this version is listening. When you are crying alone, this version is witnessing. When you are laughing with friends, it is still there, not joining, just watching. We often believe we are the one acting, the one thinking, the one feeling. But behind that experience is a quiet observer, a version of you that is not trapped by emotion, not lost in the moment. It does not change with your mood. It does not argue. It does not explain. It simply watches. And when you are still enough, you can feel it. You feel like you are living your life and also watching it unfold, like standing on a hill, looking at your own footsteps in the valley below. This distant watcher is not separate from you. It is your depth, your higher awareness, the part of you that does not react, only sees. This version of you has no fear, because it is not affected by what happens. It is not trying to fix anything. It just knows. It knows that every storm passes. It knows that pain fades. It knows that even when you feel lost, you are not truly lost, because this watcher never leaves, and it never forgets. Sometimes, when people go through something painful, they say, "I felt like I was outside my body." It is not disconnection. It is the distant you stepping forward, to hold you, to witness what your mind cannot understand. Even in joy, this part remains calm, not because it does not care, but because it understands that nothing lasts. Joy, sorrow, confusion, peace, all of it comes and goes, but the one watching stays. That is the true self, not the identity, not the personality, but the silent field behind it all. You do not have to search for it. It is already here, watching you read these words, softly, lovingly. And when you rest in that awareness, you no longer fear your thoughts. You no longer chase happiness. You simply notice. And in that noticing, there is peace. Because the you that watches from afar is the part that never leaves, the part that always knows, and the part that is always free. The memory buried in tomorrow. Imagine waking up one morning with a feeling you cannot explain, a strange kind of nostalgia, as if you are missing something that has not happened yet. You feel it in your chest, a soft ache, not about the past, not about what is gone, but about something ahead. A memory buried in tomorrow. It does not make sense. How can you miss something that is still in the future? How can you remember something you have not yet lived? But you do, in dreams, in sudden thoughts, in flashes that arrive without warning. A place you have never been, that feels familiar. A person you have not met, whose name feels known. A moment that feels like a memory, but belongs to a time that has not yet arrived. This is not fantasy. It is a deeper part of awareness. The part that exists beyond time. You see, time is not as straight as we think. It loops, it folds, it echoes, and sometimes it sends signals backward, from the future into now. Have you ever made a decision and felt instantly calm, like your future self sighed in relief? Have you ever ignored a warning in your heart, only to feel the echo of regret before anything even happened? This is the language of the future, and sometimes it speaks in memories, memories that guide you toward the person you are becoming. You are not just shaped by your past, you are also pulled by your future, by the version of you that is waiting ahead, and that version leaves hints, not in logic, but in feeling. A dream that lingers too long, a face that stirs emotion for no reason, a place that calls you with no explanation. These are the memories buried in tomorrow. They are not meant to confuse you. They are meant to prepare you, to show you that not all knowing comes from experience. Some knowing lives in the soul, in a part of you that already walked that path, even if your mind has not. And when you learn to listen to those feelings, you begin to move differently. You start trusting the pull. You start saying yes to things that feel familiar, even if they make no sense, because deep down, something in you remembers, not the details, but the essence, not the event, but the meaning. And as time unfolds, you reach that moment, the one you felt before it arrived, and you smile. Not because it is new, but because you have been here before. Not in your past, but in your future. And now, that memory has caught up to you. Time becomes soft, the edges blur, and you begin to realize you are not just living a life, you are also remembering it, from both directions, past and future, old and new, and somewhere between the two is this moment, where everything meets, where the forgotten memory buried in tomorrow becomes the truth you are living today, the nothing that created everything. Imagine absolute stillness, no sound, no movement, no color, not even space, just pure, endless nothing, not darkness. Darkness still has presence, not silence. Silence still belongs to time, but true nothing, the kind that has no name, no weight, no shape, no beginning. Now imagine that from this nothing, everything began, all of it, the stars, the light, the planets, thought, time, you. It feels impossible. Something cannot come from nothing, we say. But that is exactly what happened. The universe did not burst out of something. It came from the absence of everything. And that is where the mystery begins. Because this nothing must have contained something, a seed, a spark, not made of matter, but of potential. Not something physical, but something deeper, a quiet awareness, a silent possibility, a whisper that said, "Let there be," and there was. We are so used to things being caused by other things. This leads to that leads to this. But if you keep going backward, looking for the start of it all, you reach a wall, because before time there was no time. Before space, no space. Before thought, no mind. So what was there? Nothing. But a nothing so rich with stillness that it gave birth to everything. We live in the result of that birth. Galaxies spinning, cells dividing, thoughts rising. All of it, echoes of that first emptiness. The strange part is, you can still feel it. Inside you. In the gaps between your thoughts. In the quiet moment before sleep. In the silence of deep meditation. There is a presence there. But it is not something. It is the space that holds everything. Like the blank page that holds the words. Like the silence that holds the music. That nothing is still here. Right now. Inside you. Around you. Beneath everything. And it is not dead. It is alive with potential. It is what allows life to change. Because if everything was already full, there would be no space to grow. But because of the nothing, there is space for new, for possibility, for creation. This is not just a theory. It is a truth you can feel. Close your eyes. Notice the space between thoughts. That is the same nothing that created the stars. It does not need to be understood. It just needs to be noticed. Because in that noticing, you return to your origin, not your birth, but the space before it, not your story, but the silence that holds it. That is where you come from. That is where you return. And that is what you truly are, not a thing, but the space where all things begin, the nothing that somehow created everything, the consciousness that doubts itself. Picture this mind. It sits quietly, watching the world. It sees beauty, pain, thought, wonder. And then it does something strange. It turns on itself and asks, is any of this real? Not because of fear, but because of depth, because consciousness is not just aware of the world, it is aware of itself, and in that loop, doubt is born. This is the consciousness that doubts itself. A mind that begins to question the very thing it uses to question. It is not broken. It is not confused. It is simply too awake to settle for simple answers. When a dog looks into a mirror, it sees another dog. When you look into your own thoughts, you see something else. You see yourself looking. And that changes everything. You start asking things that have no easy answers. Who is thinking this thought? Where do thoughts come from? Can I trust what I experience? And most of all, what am I really? These questions do not lead to clarity right away. This kind of trust is not naive. It is deep. It is quiet. It comes from seeing that the world continues even when you are lost, that life breathes even when you feel broken, That clarity is not something you chase. It is something you return to by resting, by letting go, by allowing confusion to do its job, and then leave. And when it leaves, you are not the same. You have not just learned something. You have become someone new, someone softer, someone truer. Because you walked through the fog and did not run from it. You sat in the middle of the storm and waited for your heartbeat to guide you. And now, on the other side, you no longer need all the answers. You no longer cling to the questions. You are simply here. And this here-ness is clear, not perfect, not always easy, but real. The kind of clarity that comes when you are finally okay with not knowing. The kind of truth that needs no proof, because it is lived. It is breathed. It is yours. And now, as the fog lifts completely, you realize something quietly beautiful. You are not afraid of confusion anymore, because you know what lives beneath it. Truth, not hidden, just waiting for you to stop running and begin listening. And now, you are listening. And truth is no longer a concept. It is the presence that has been with you all along. The mind that wrote the universe. Imagine a blank page, endless, infinite, no lines, no borders, just a vast emptiness waiting to be touched. Now imagine that on this page a single thought appears, not written in ink, not spoken in sound, but formed in pure awareness. That thought becomes light, the light becomes space, space becomes form, and suddenly the universe begins, not with an explosion, but with an idea. This is the beginning of the mind that wrote the universe. It is not a mind made of neurons, not a brain floating in a void. It is something older than structure, deeper than thought. It is a presence that could imagine without needing to speak, a silence that carried intention, a knowing that had no need for logic. Before there were galaxies, before time had rhythm, before matter knew it was matter, there was only this mind, and it imagined, not once, not like a single act, but continuously, effortlessly. Every star, every law, every strange quirk of gravity, all born from this invisible architect. And now you are here, reading these words, thinking your own thoughts, wondering what it all means. But have you ever wondered, where do your thoughts come from? Not the ones you repeat, not the ones you were taught, but the ones that arrive like visitors in the night, the ones that surprise you, the ones that feel too deep to have come from memory. What if your mind is not separate from that first one? What if every thought you have is a ripple of that original wave? Not just a byproduct of biology, but a spark from something ancient, a whisper from the mind that wrote the universe. Look around you. Everything you see was once invisible, even the screen in front of you, the walls around you, the clothes on your skin. Once, none of it existed, until someone imagined it, until some mind, not unlike yours, pictured something that was not yet real, and then made it real. That is the hidden power of the mind. It creates, it shapes, it writes reality into being. We call it imagination, but that word is too soft. It is creation, at the most fundamental level. The universe is not a cold machine. It is a living story, written in every direction, and you are not outside of it. You are a sentence within it, a paragraph, a chapter, a piece of the same intelligence that imagined the first light. This is why you wonder, why you seek, why you ask questions that have no answers. Because you are not just a character in the story. You are a reader who remembers writing, even if you have forgotten. And in that forgetting, the search begins. The mind that wrote the universe is not far away. It is not out there. It is right here. Behind your thoughts, beneath your doubts, within your stillness. The same space where the first idea was born still exists in you. You feel it when time slows, when beauty stops your breath, when truth breaks through your resistance. You feel it when you love for no reason, when you cry without knowing why, when silence feels full instead of empty, That is the mind speaking again, not in words, but in presence, in clarity, in wonder. And the more you listen, the more you remember, not with memory, but with being. You do not need to understand the whole universe. You only need to return to the place within you, where it began, the mind that wrote the universe. Imagine sitting completely still, no movement, no sound, just you and your breath. For a while, it feels like nothing is happening, but then a shift begins. You start to sense something behind your thoughts, not another thought, but a space, a watcher, a presence, quiet, steady, and untouched by whatever your mind is doing. That presence is not new. It has always been there. You just did not notice it. You were busy thinking, planning, remembering, trying to make sense of everything. But that presence was watching the whole time. It is the same presence that once imagined stars into existence, the same presence that wrote reality into being. It never left. It only waited. People think the universe is outside of them, as if it is something to look at, measure, and explore. But the mind that wrote it is not found in telescopes or formulas. It is found in stillness, in silence, in the part of you that does not speak but always knows. Look at how everything flows, the way the seasons turn, the way your heart beats without asking, the way breath moves in and out without effort. Nothing is being forced. It is all happening by something deeper than thought, a knowing that is older than your name. And here you are, living in the middle of it, not separate from it, but shaped by it, formed by it. You carry it without even trying. Every time you imagine a future, create something new, or feel awe in the presence of something vast, that same mind is moving through you. That is the quiet truth. You are not just made of matter. You are made of meaning. And meaning does not come from what you think. It comes from what you touch without words. The feeling that something is right, even when you do not know why. The sense that something is calling, even when no sound is made. That calling is the thread, and it leads back to the source. The more you trust it, the less confused you become. Not because you gain answers, but because you no longer need them. The mind that wrote the universe is not worried about explanations. It is not in a hurry. It creates and lets go. It moves and rests. It appears and disappears. It knows that everything is part of the same rhythm. Birth and death, light and dark, thought and silence. When you fight the rhythm, you suffer, you grasp, you panic, you try to control the page while the story is still being written. But when you stop fighting, something opens. You begin to move with life, not against it. You begin to live from the same place the stars were born. You do not try to be wise. You become quiet enough to hear what wisdom already lives inside you. The thoughts that used to feel so loud no longer lead. They follow. They follow something older than language, and you begin to understand something strange. The mind that wrote the universe is not something to find. It is something to return to, something to rest in, not as a new idea, but as your original nature, the awareness before your first memory, the stillness beneath every emotion, the silence that sees without needing to name. That is the mind that imagined everything into motion, not to control it, but to experience it, to watch it unfold, to live through you. You are not reading this from the outside looking in. You are the unfolding. And when you know that, you no longer need to ask what you are supposed to become. You already are. The mind that wrote the universe. You are not just thinking inside a universe. You are thinking with it. You are not just alive in this story. You are part of the storyteller. Everything you sense, everything you feel, is happening inside something vast, but what is even more strange, something familiar. There comes a point when the line between the observer and the creation fades. You are no longer a small being inside a big cosmos. You begin to see that the cosmos lives inside you, not in a poetic way, in a very real way. The same intelligence that causes stars to burn, that pulls waves across oceans, that gives trees the impulse to grow upward and roots to dig down. That same intelligence is what guides your attention, what shapes your intuition, what stirs your questions. You think you are just thinking, but look deeper. You are reaching, you are listening, and the one you are listening for is you. The you that existed before identity, the you before language. The mind that wrote the universe did not stop writing. It is writing still, through everything you touch, every emotion, every movement, even your confusion, even your silence. It is all being written through you, but it is not just writing lines of experience. It is writing understanding. It is writing awareness into itself. Because the universe is not just expanding outward, it is waking up inward, through your seeing, through your remembering. You are not here by accident. You are here because the story required a page like yours. You were not thrown into the world, you were invited into it. And now you are standing in the space between author and character. That is why some things feel too deep to explain. Some feelings too wide for words. It is because you are remembering something that cannot be spoken, only lived, only felt. Every time you close your eyes and feel that stillness watching, that is it. Every time you stop thinking and start listening, that is it. And every time you feel the mystery rise in your chest without needing to be solved, that is it. You are not separate from the origin. You are made of it. The stars may seem far, but the same force that made them breathe is the force that lets you feel. There is no final chapter. There is no end to this story, because the mind that wrote the universe is not looking to finish anything. It is simply experiencing itself in more and more beautiful ways. And in this moment, it is experiencing itself through you. You are not a thought in the universe. You are the universe thinking. And now you remember. End of knowing you were awake. Part 1. Imagine lying in bed at night, staring at the ceiling. The room is quiet. The light is low. Your body is still. Thoughts drift in and out, but something feels different. You are not fully asleep, not fully awake. You are aware of everything, and yet nothing feels solid. You begin to ask yourself, am I dreaming? But you are not sure. You feel real. The blanket, your breath, the silence. But something underneath it all starts to whisper a deeper question. What does it even mean to be awake? You have always believed there is a difference between sleeping and waking, between illusion and reality. But what if that line is not as clear as it seems? What if the mind plays both sides of that game? What if the moment you think you are fully awake is just another layer of the dream? This is where the unraveling begins. The journey toward the end of knowing you are awake. We are taught that awareness is a simple switch. You are either conscious or you are not. But the truth is more complicated, because what you call consciousness is built on stories. You open your eyes in the morning and think, this is my life. You remember your name, your responsibilities, your habits. And with all of that memory comes the assumption that this must be the real world. But stop for a second. Look closer. Are you seeing reality? Or are you seeing your version of it? The one shaped by belief. The one wrapped in thoughts. The one filtered through layers of emotion, memory, and identity. You may think, of course I am awake. I feel it. But that feeling is just another sensation. What if there is no final moment where you can say, now I am fully awake? What if awareness has no edge? What if it keeps unfolding, deeper and deeper, like a dream within a dream within a dream? Each layer feels real. Each layer feels like the final one, until the next begins. This is not meant to confuse you. It is meant to open something, to loosen your grip on certainty, because certainty is often what traps you in illusion. You become so sure that this moment, this version of reality, is complete, that you stop noticing the cracks, the little signs that there is more, the feeling that you are watching yourself live, like a character in a story. the sudden loss of time when you stare out the window, the way your thoughts continue on their own, without you choosing them. These moments are clues, they are the invitations, to step behind the veil of what you think is real, to begin asking not just, "Am I awake?" but, "Who is the one asking that question?" This is where the truth begins to bend, because once you realize you are not fully awake, you might begin trying to wake up. You meditate, you read, you observe your thoughts, and for a while, it feels like progress. You say, "Now I see clearly." But the moment you say that, another veil forms, a new illusion, a new version of me who thinks it has figured it out. But the real awakening is not something you can hold, not something you can describe. It is the dissolving of the one who wants to know, the one who needs proof, the one who needs to declare, "I am awake." Because as long as you need to say it, you are still dreaming. The truth is not in the knowing. It is in the quiet beyond knowing, the place where there is no one left to ask the question, only presence, only silence, only the soft, boundless sense of being. And that is where this journey will take you, to the place beyond even awareness of being awake, to the end of knowing, to the stillness that does not need to be named. The end of knowing you were awake. Imagine your eyes opening, but not because you were asleep. You were already awake, but something shifted. Not in your body, in your awareness. Like something old peeled away without a sound. You sit in a familiar room. The same walls, the same air. Nothing around you has changed, and yet it feels completely different. You are not looking at the world. You are looking at the looking. This is the beginning of something that cannot be named. Not because it is mystical, but because it keeps moving away the moment you try to hold it. You do not know if you are dreaming. You do not know if you have ever truly woken up. What you do know is that something has cracked. The part of you that once said, "I know what this is quiet now. You are watching your own thoughts as if they belong to someone else. You are listening to your voice from somewhere behind it. Everything continues, the routine, the conversations, the noise of life. But something is different. You are no longer convinced. You used to say, "I am awake." Now, you are not so sure, not because you are asleep, but because the person who used to make that claim feels like a shadow. You begin to notice how much of your waking life is made of habits. Not just habits of action, habits of identity, habits of belief, habits of seeing. You are not just walking through the world. You are repeating a version of yourself that was taught to you. This is the real sleep, the sleep that wears the mask of knowing, of confidence, of clarity. But now that mask is slipping, not all at once, in gentle, small ways. You feel it when someone asks, "How are you?" And you almost say, "I'm fine," but stop, because you are not sure who "I" is. You feel it when you walk past a mirror and pause, not because you look strange, but because something in that reflection feels unfamiliar, not wrong, just not solid. Like the edges of you have become soft. You used to feel like a person. Now you feel like a question, and that question cannot be answered by the mind, because the mind is part of the dream. It is the voice that tries to narrate what is happening. But what is happening is too deep for narration. You are not trying to wake up anymore, because you no longer know what that means. Awake compared to what? Dreams inside dreams do not end with a moment. They end when there is no longer a dreamer to claim them. You used to ask, "How do I know I am awake?" Now you sit quietly and let the question dissolve, not because you found the answer, but because you realized the question came from a part of you that was never real to begin with, and what remains is not silence. It is not stillness. It is not peace. It is something beneath all those words, something you cannot describe, because it is not an experience. It is the space all experiences move through. You are not having this moment. This moment is happening through you. You are not witnessing life. Life is remembering itself in your form, and you no longer need to say, "I am awake," because there is no one left to say it. The end of knowing you were awake. You used to walk through the world thinking, "I am here." Now you walk, and it is simply walking. No one is claiming it. No one is narrating it. It is just happening, not in a robotic way. Not like you disappeared, but like you finally stepped aside. There is still a body, still movement, still thought, but none of it is wrapped in identity. You look at a tree and do not say, "That is a tree." You just see. The labels are fading. The urge to define everything weakens. You feel less like a person with a name and more like a presence that sees without needing to comment. It is not detachment. It is not numbness. It is freedom. From the voice that always had to be someone. That voice still speaks sometimes. It says, "This is weird." But even that voice is seen now. It rises. It passes. It does not linger. You are not pushing it away. You are not grabbing it. You are just noticing. Like watching leaves float across a quiet lake. You begin to realize that most of what you called being awake was just a performance. You had ideas about what awareness should feel like, what clarity should sound like. You chased those feelings. You read books. You sat still. You did all the things. But now you are not chasing, because the one who chased is gone, and what remains is not trying to arrive anywhere. It just is. And in that isness, there is rest. Not the kind of rest that comes from sleep, but the kind that comes when you are no longer fighting to stay awake, because you see now that awareness is not something you reach. It is something you remember. Something you fall back into the moment you stop pretending. You used to think being awake meant having insight. Now you know it means having nothing to prove, not even to yourself. You are not trying to understand anymore, because understanding requires someone to hold the knowledge. But what if there is no one holding anything? What if the knowing flows freely, and you are just the space it moves through? That is what this feels like. Not enlightenment, not a grand revelation, just the quiet truth that you were never asleep. You were only dreaming of being a separate self, and the dream had layers, thoughts, emotions, memories, beliefs. But now those layers are soft. They do not hold you the way they once did. You are still here, but not in the way you thought. You are here like space is here, silent, open, undefined, and you watch life continue, people talking, plans unfolding, and you participate, but not as a character, as presence, moving when it needs to move, speaking when it needs to speak, no longer asking, "Is this awareness?" Because that question belongs to the one who forgot, and now you remember, not with thoughts, but with stillness, the end of knowing you were awake. Now even the idea of remembering begins to fade. You are not remembering something lost. You are not returning to something distant. You are simply being. And in that being, everything becomes simple. You eat. You breathe. You look at the sky. There is no spiritual meaning attached to it. No need to extract wisdom. It is just what it is, and somehow that is enough. You used to need reasons. You needed meaning to hold on to. Now, meaning arises like a breeze. It passes through, but you no longer reach for it. Even the sense of time begins to shift. You are not waiting for the future. You are not looking back at the past. The moment opens, and you fall into it. You realize that what you once called you was mostly tension, a tightness around thought, a grasping at identity, a name trying to survive. But now that tightness is gone. And what remains is not emptiness, it is lightness. Before, you thought awareness was something sharp, something you had to earn, something that came with pressure. But now, awareness feels soft, gentle. It is not asking for anything. It is not trying to wake up. It is not trying to stay awake, it just is. The world around you is the same, the sounds, the people, the problems, but they do not stick the way they used to. There is no resistance in you, no argument with what is. And that lack of resistance does not mean passivity, it means presence. The kind of presence that moves without fear, that speaks without proving, that acts without needing reward. You notice when someone is angry, but their anger no longer enters your space. It is not personal, it is just weather passing through. You notice your own thoughts, the quick opinions, the sudden doubts. But they are seen like birds in the sky, not caught, not chased. They appear, they move, they vanish, and you are still here. Not as someone, just here. Before, you thought freedom meant having control. Now you see freedom means needing none. The sense of identity is thinner now, lighter, like a shirt you wear when needed, then remove without thought. You do not need to be anything, and that is why you can be fully present with anything, joy or pain, silence or noise. You meet it without pulling away, because there is no one left to protect. And in that absence of protection, there is deep peace, not dramatic, not overwhelming, just steady, always here. You used to measure awakening, you wondered how far you had come. Now there is no distance, no path, no final arrival, just unfolding, just now. And the question, am I awake, has no power here, because you are no longer the one who needs to know. The end of knowing you were awake. The silence that surrounds you now is not empty, it is full, not full of answers, not full of conclusions, just full of presence. It is not something you hear, it is something you feel, not in your ears, but in your entire being. Even your thoughts are quieter now, not because they stopped, but because you are not holding on to them. They pass through like wind in an open field. They do not define you anymore. There is no urge to believe every idea, no urgency to follow every thought. And because of that, a new space has opened, a space where something deeper can be felt, not something outside of you, something you always were, but now, without the noise, you can finally feel it. It is not dramatic, not an explosion. It is simple, gentle, still, and it does not need to call itself awakening, because naming it would only separate you from it. It is not something to capture, it is something to relax into. You are not floating above life. You are more fully in it than ever. You are not trying to rise, you are finally settling. The things you used to chase no longer call your name. The fears you once avoided no longer hold the same weight. And even when discomfort appears, you do not run. Because there is nowhere else to go. There is only here, only this. You used to think the spiritual path would lead you to perfection. Now you understand it leads to wholeness, and wholeness does not exclude anything. It does not require you to be always calm or always wise. It only asks that you stop pretending. And now, there is no more pretending. There is just what is. You are not seeking truth anymore. You are resting in it. You are not asking life to reveal itself. You are letting it be. And it turns out that is what it was waiting for. The thoughts may still say, you must do more. But the space behind those thoughts knows otherwise. It is not in a hurry. It is not measuring. It is simply being. This state has no goal, no ending. It cannot be lost because it was never something to hold. It cannot be taught because it was never knowledge. And you no longer need to convince yourself you are awake, because even that idea has dissolved. The end of knowing you were awake. Now you move through life with less effort, less identity. You still walk, you still speak, you still feel, but it is all quieter inside. There is no narrator behind your thoughts trying to explain everything. No voice measuring how aware you are. Everything just happens, and that is enough. You eat your food, and it tastes like food. Not a metaphor, not a message, just what it is. You watch the world, and it is not a test. It is not a lesson. It is simply unfolding, Before, you saw your life as something to solve, something to perfect. Now, you watch it like weather. Clouds move, rain falls, wind shifts, and none of it is personal. There is a strange peace in that. Not the kind that makes you feel powerful, but the kind that makes you feel light, like you have nothing left to protect, like the tension in your chest that was always there, quietly left when you were not looking. You still feel joy, still feel sadness. But they come and go like waves now. You do not grab them. You do not chase them away. You let them rise. You let them fall. Because you are not the one trying to control the ocean anymore. You are just the space it moves through. Even the self feels distant now. Not gone, not erased, but soft, thin, like a jacket you used to wear every day, but now only notice when it feels tight. Sometimes you catch yourself trying to return to the old way of thinking. You try to name what this is. You try to ask, what does this mean? But the question lands in silence. Not because there is no answer, but because the one who needed the answer is not here. And that is not a problem. It is a relief. You do not miss the old self. You see now that it was always working so hard, to be right, to be loved, to be awake. And now, without that effort, there is more space. Not physical space, space inside you. A kind of openness that does not need to be filled. A kind of quiet that holds everything gently. Even your flaws, even your mistakes. You no longer try to fix yourself, not because you think you are perfect, but because the one who needed fixing is not here either. There is only this moment, not waiting for the next, not trying to hold the last, just this. And the more you rest in that, the more you see there is nothing left to achieve, nothing to understand, nothing to become, only this breath, this seeing, this being, and all of it unfolds without your control, because it never needed it. The end of knowing you were awake. Everything is simple now, but it is not the simplicity of dullness. It is the simplicity of no longer needing to grasp. You are not watching life from a distance. You are fully in it, but without the struggle of trying to figure out where you stand in it. The you that once asked, "Am I doing it right?" is fading. The one that judged every action, measured every word, compared every moment to some imaginary idea of how it should feel quiet now. And with that quiet comes space. You notice the way the sun moves across the floor. You hear the layers in silence. Not emptiness, but texture. You feel life brushing against you, not demanding anything, just passing through. You are not frozen. You still act. You still care. But your actions are no longer held up by a heavy self. You do what you do, and it feels like wind moving through trees. Nothing clings, nothing resists. Before, awareness felt like a task, a discipline. You had to maintain it, protect it, prove it. Now awareness is not something you do. It is what remains when you stop doing. It is the natural state beneath every attempt, and it has no need to declare itself. There is no longer a voice saying, "This is awakening," because even that would be too loud, too much. Now you see the beauty in not needing to name what this is. It is just what remains when effort disappears. The body still moves, the world still turns, but you do not take it personally. Not in the way you used to. You used to be the one in the center, holding it all together. Now you are the space that holds the center. You are the stillness around the movement, the openness that allows everything to pass through. Even confusion is welcome now. Even forgetting is part of the rhythm. You are no longer measuring clarity. You are not tracking progress. There is no scoreboard, no final test. There is only now, only this strange and sacred unfolding. And you are no longer trying to wake up, because you have seen that even the need to be awake was part of the dream. The last pieces of that dream are fading. Not in a rush, not with force, just gently dissolving. And what is left is stillness. There is nothing left to prove, nothing left to become. The one who tried, the one who searched, the one who questioned whether they were awake or not, that one is no longer here. And strangely, nothing feels missing. In fact, the absence feels more complete than any presence you had known before. You are not empty. You are whole. But not in the way the mind used to imagine wholeness. Not as a destination. Not as a polished version of you. Wholeness now feels like space. Room for everything to exist, just as it is. Thoughts still come. So do emotions. Pain appears. Laughter rises. But none of it needs to be sorted anymore. Nothing needs to be explained. You used to need to know what things meant. Now they are allowed to simply be. You do not label every experience as deep or shallow, awake or asleep, true or false. You just see. The act of seeing is enough, not to achieve something, not to get somewhere, just to be with what is. Even the concept of being awake has no hold anymore. It is no longer something special. It is not something you talk about, not something you teach. Because who would speak, and to whom? There is no one here carrying knowledge. There is just life, unfolding, like clouds passing across a wide sky, like music that plays without needing to be remembered, and you feel yourself as that music, not the player, not the listener, just the sound. You are not watching the moment anymore. You are the moment. Not observing it from behind a thought, not reaching for it with attention. You are it, and you are not trying to hold it, because you see now, it cannot be held. It cannot be described. It cannot be kept. It is free, and so are you. This freedom is not loud. It is not dramatic. It does not shine brightly. It rests like a feather on water. It disappears when looked at too hard, but when left alone, it fills everything. You have come to the end, not the end of life, not the end of experience, the end of knowing, the end of needing to know, the end of asking whether you are awake, because now, the one who asked is gone, and what remains is what has always been here, quiet, unshaken, alive, without a center, without a self. Just this, and this is enough, and that's it. Hope you're in peace. Just consider subscribing, because sleep matters. Just then, stress scatters, and nothing else matters, right? Peace out.